Hi, folks. It's 5:30, so we'll get started. A quorum being present of the City Council, I wanted to call tonight's March 9th, 2026 meeting to order. The first order of business is a roll call of members present.
Councilor El-Zubi? Present. Vice Mayor Azim? Present. Councilor Flaherty? Present. Councilor McGovern? Present. Councilor Nolan? Present. Councilor Simmons? Present. Councilor Sabrina Wheeler?
Present.
Present. Councilor Zusi?
Present.
Present. Mayor Siddiqui?
Present.
Present. You have 9 members recorded as present.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and pause for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Per Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, adopted by Massachusetts General Court and approved by the Governor, the City is authorized to use remote participation at meetings of the Cambridge City Council. In addition to having members of the Council participate remotely, we've set up Zoom teleconference for public comment. You can also view the meeting via the City's open meeting portal or on the City's cable channel 22. To speak during public comment, you have to sign up at www.cambridgema.gov/public comment. You can also email written comments for the record to the City Clerk at cityclerk@cambridgema.gov. We welcome your participation, and you can sign up until 6 p.m. Please note that the City of Cambridge audio and video records this meeting and makes it available to the public for future viewing. In addition, third parties may also be audio and video recording this meeting. We'll move to public comment. Public comment may be made in accordance with the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20G, and City Council Rules 23D and 37. Once you finish speaking, the next speaker will be called. Individuals are not permitted to allocate the remainder of their time to other speakers. I ask that you state your name and address for the record and the item on the agenda you're speaking on. We have 18 speakers who have signed up. Each speaker will have 3 minutes.
Our first speaker is Nathan Hofgen Harvey, followed by Marlene Lundberg. Nathan, 3 minutes. Nathan, if you can turn the mic on.
Okay. Hello, my name is Nathan Hefkin Harvey. I live at 22 Haskell Street in Cambridge. I'm a graduate student at Boston University School of Social Work and a social work intern in Counselor Mark McGovern's office. I'm here to voice my support for Policy Order Number 1, opposing the Department of Education's proposed reclassification of professional degrees, and Policy Order Number 2, recognizing March 2026 as National Social Work Month. Social workers work in many different spaces and serve in a variety of roles. For example, social workers make up the majority of the behavioral and mental health workforce in the United States. Social workers are also, among other things, case managers, academic researchers, community organizers, nonprofit leaders, grant writers, policy analysts, and even elected officials. What unites all social workers are core values like service to those in need and the dignity and worth of all people. The Department of Education's proposed reclassification of professional degrees would exclude nursing, social work, and other helping professions. Professional degree candidates can borrow up to $50,000 annually in federal loans, while students who are not enrolled in professional degree programs are limited to borrowing $20,500 annually. Tuition for full-time master's social work programs in the Boston area range from $40,000 to almost $80,000 per year. Many low and moderate income people who want to pursue careers in social work won't be able to afford it under the Department of Education's proposed changes. The Bureau of Labor Statistics projects a deficit of 74,000 social workers per year for the next decade. The Department of Education's changes would only make the social worker deficit worse. I ask that the Council vote in favor of Policy Orders Number 1 and 2. Please oppose the Department of Education's damaging reclassification proposal and celebrate National Social Work Month. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Marlene Lundberg, followed by Alex Matthews. Marlene? Marlene, you're unmuted. If you can, please go ahead. Marlene is not speaking. We will go to Alex
Good
Matthews.
evening, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead. Marlene, you're unmuted. You have the floor, 3 minutes. We can't hear you right now. We're going to skip Marlene and come back. Alex Matthews.
Evening.
Yes, Marlene, please go ahead. Nicole, if you can just mute her, we'll come back. Alex Matthews, you have the floor, 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Alex Matthews. I am the volunteer chair of Digital Fourth. For those who are new on the council, we are a local group of volunteer civil liberties interested people. We include attorneys, nerds, regular citizens, and we focus on issues of privacy and government surveillance. And since 2012, we have worked with mainly Cambridge, Somerville, and Boston, and also on Beacon Hill to advise on privacy and government surveillance issues. I'm here to speak on item number 1 on the city manager's agenda, the annual surveillance report. The good news for you all is that out of all the technologies that are on there, we have no problem with 68 of them. On the other hand, there are 8 that we have some questions about. The first thing I'd like to emphasize is that as city councillors, you have full power annually to approve or disapprove of any surveillance technologies that are deployed by the city under the terms of the surveillance ordinance. The items that we are proposing that you revoke approval for this year are, one of them's a little bit of a formality, the automated license plate recognition, because you guys already revoked the contract for flock safety. We propose revocation of authorization to deploy ShotSpotter and also the CCTV cameras at Central Square. We have extensive written testimony for you, which we will be supplying by email after the meeting to go into the reasons for those proposals. There are 2 technologies that we believe need more information and auditing. One of them is the city's partnership with BRIC, the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, and one is the magnet forensics cell phone intrusion technology. There are 3 technologies that need restrictions. The Cambridge PD's use of covert cameras, whether the police department should be permitted to use the Sprout social media surveillance software, and also some questions about where the data is going for the water department's automated meter readers. We look forward to working with the city on these issues, and we look forward to consideration by the Public Safety Committee of the more controversial technologies among the many that are before you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Marlene Lundberg, followed by Marilee Meyer, then Young Kim. Marlene, you are unmuted. Please go ahead. Marlene, you don't need to press
you hear
anything.
me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. Good evening. My name is Marlene Lundberg. I live at 4 Canal Park, Cambridge. With respect to Wednesday's March 11th Ordinance Committee meeting, I am requesting some fine-tuning of the Cambridge Street zoning regulations. I strongly support the following. Number 1, and most important, careful expert review of any plans for biolabs. It is of utmost importance that the city reviews each biolab's biorisk management. to make sure it will safely control the handling, storage, and disposal of biological agents and toxins. There must be no biolabs as of right. Number 2, annual reports on net counts of trees, retail space, market rate, and affordable housing, i.e. the amount demolished and constructed for each of these. Number 3, rear setbacks, 10 feet to allow for green plantings and small trees. Number 4, height stepbacks, 45 degrees on the south side of the street, specifically 10 feet on the 5th and 6th floors. And number 5, open space wherever possible to make the street more humane. In closing, I want to restate the importance of my first point. We must have careful review of any plans for biolabs.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marilee Meyer, followed by Young Kim. Marilee, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
I'm Marilee Meyer, 10 Dana Street. Today's agenda reminds me of Council's priorities when it comes to passing pet projects. The goal is the final vote, not the comprehensive plan to get there. We saw this with certain councilors ignoring the zoning history and consequences of the Dover exemption as they solicited religious groups for multifamily zoning support. The multifamily zoning opened Pandora's box, showcasing religious and educational expansions into neighborhood. While this is a federal issue, Cambridge was exempt. Is there a viable pathway to amend guardrails for educational expansions? This needs to be looked into. The bigger issue now that both Mass Ave and Cambridge Street rezoning has been ushered through is what is lacking in critical discussion. The modus operandi continues to be rapid approval and too little discussion before consequential votes. One councilor touted at one point 83 amendments in the AHO, proving that they do listen. But wouldn't it be better to fix all those details prior to the final vote? It is a waste of time. Cambridge Street addressed heights from 8 stories to 6 stories as a singular check box. Ground floor use is up next. But what about labs, open space, setbacks, and design elements pushed off for later discussion? When Cambridge Street advocates wanted to continue these talking points, they were dismissed. Again, vote now, fix later. Perhaps the mantra of the ordinance committee, which seems to think that re-examining ongoing issue is tantamount to relitigation. These issues should have been resolved before the final vote, not after the coordinated push. This is not relitigation. Next up, Central Square, where the same zoning councilors will again ignore crucial discussion. Council will continue to be the machine pushing through their agenda. I hope personal and civil engagement, which tends to be lacking in these monumental citywide changes, are taken seriously. Please resolve these ongoing issues for a better product. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Young Kim, followed by Susan Markowitz, then Shelley Riemann. Young, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
17 Norris Street, speaking on calendar item number 1, POR 2026-50, in the context of CMA number 5. When you place these 2 agenda items side by side, what picture do you see? A picture of good governance or setting of dangerous precedent? The council has asked the ordinance committee to include discussion of additional items related to the Cambridge Street zoning amendment at its upcoming meeting, even though that amendment was adopted barely 2 months ago. CMA number 5 explains the reason. It states that during the council's review of the Mass Ave and Cambridge Street zoning petitions, a policy order was submitted asking staff to return with the further zoning changes to strengthen requirements for active ground floor uses. CTD is now prepared to discuss this recommendation and potentially draft follow-up zoning amendment. This raises a serious and important question about precedent. Are we now adopting major zoning amendment with the expectation that additional amendment will immediately follow before the effects and the impacts of the recent adopted changes have even been observed or evaluated? We saw something similar during the multifamily housing zoning discussion. That petition moved forward even though the additional zoning proposals affecting non-AHU corridors and non-AHU squares were already anticipated and waiting in the wings. And we are seeing it again with the Mass Avenue corridor amendment. In fact, one developer was sufficiently confident that the amendment would be adopted at the community meeting of began. Preliminary plans were developed, and the planning board advisory review was scheduled within weeks of its adoption. Over the past few years, the city has adopted several significant zoning amendments: expansion of affordable housing overlay, the elimination of accessory parking requirements, and corridor rezoning along Mass Ave and Cambridge Street. Each of these changes has its own policy objectives, but when adopted incrementally and without comprehensive assessment of the combined effects, the results can become difficult to evaluate. Meanwhile, the cumulative effect of multiple zoning changes are already beginning to appear along Mass Avenue between Waterhouse Street and Illinois Brook Parkway, where a number of projects.
Thank you for your public comment, Young. Feel free to email us the remainder.
Our next speaker is Susan Markowitz, followed by Shelley Riemann, then Richard Krushnick. Susan, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Susan Markowitz. I live at 20 Oak Street. I'm speaking to Charter Right Number 1. At the upcoming March 11th Ordinance Committee meeting about the Cambridge Street ground floor active use, I'm urging you to also include discussion of the following Cambridge Street neighbors' positions. 1, no labs as of right, in particular wet labs. 2, rear setbacks of 10 feet in order to avoid weed infestation. 3, step backs, a 10-foot step back above the 4th floor in buildings on the south side of the street, and any additional setback from the sidewalk can then be subtracted from the 10 feet. 4, open space adjacent to Miller's River Apartments should be rezoned as open space. 5, project review. 1 community meeting for buildings above 3 stories, 2 community meetings for buildings above 4 stories. 6, annual reporting, market units created and destroyed, affordable units created and destroyed, annual retail created, annual street trees planted and destroyed, and annual street trees that have died. These positions reflect what the Cambridge Street study called for, but unfortunately they were not discussed during the previous rapid approval process of the Cambridge Street upzoning petition in January. Discussing them now does not mean approval, but it does mean consideration. Cambridge Street is one of the last unique neighborhood-focused streets, and many of us would like to preserve it. Hopefully, with discussion, we can come up with a more fine-tuned zoning. And if there is not enough time to have this discussion at the next Ordinance Committee meeting, then I request that an additional meeting be scheduled. Thank you. As an aside, my husband is number 8, and his computer doesn't work. Is it possible for him to speak as number 8 on my computer?
Yes, Susan, we'll call when we call him. Thank you.
Okay.
Our next speaker is Shelley Riemann, followed by Richard Krushnick. Shelley, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Hi, this is Shelley Riemann, 201 Franklin Street in Cambridge. I'm speaking about the Cambridge Street upzoning and the upcoming Ordinance Committee meeting. The Cambridge Street group of neighbors are an inspiration to all Canterbridgians. They have met and flyered and reached out to neighbors and businesses all along Cambridge Street. The area encompasses many different cultures and lifestyles and groups who have varied native languages. What they all have in common is the right to be part of the decision-making processes that affect their lives and their specific vicinity, including East Cambridge, Millers River, the area near the Galleria Mall, Webster Ave, the Valente Library and King Open School Complex, and Inman Square. The upzoning lacked community input and a democratic process. I'm writing to ask that the reasonable concerns of the Cambridge Street neighbors be respected and that their priorities are listened to at the meeting on the 11th, including regarding first floor uses, no wet labs, setbacks, and step backs should be addressed at that meeting. Inman Square is a wonderful historic square. More development there would ruin the tranquil yet purposeful feel of Inman Square. I live on Franklin Street, steps away from the Cambridge Central Square Library. We have a neighborhood feeling and identity here, even though there is so much bustle and activity in Central Square. Central Square could never be low-key or relaxed like Inman Square. It's a transportation hub. By definition, is transient. I know Central Square rezoning is the next big project. Residents will want to preserve what we can of the history and character of our neighborhood. We will have the Cambridge Street neighbors as inspiration and role model. We'll need that. Thank you for all your work for the city we love.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Richard Krushnick, followed by Henry H. Wardis, then Lee Harris. Richard, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. As a member of the Cambridge Street Neighbors Group, you've heard several iterations of our list of 6 priorities. So I, of course, also am asking for the same thing with the caveat that there were 2 versions of the setbacks mentioned. I support the one that simply calls for a 10-foot setback above the 4th floor. And if there's a setback on the sidewalk, that can be credited against the 10 feet on the 4th floor. These should be discussed now as requested and not kicked down the road and dealt with in a new petition in the long-term planning committee, or failing that by a citizen's petition. These other alternatives are just going to be more inefficient. They're going to take more of the council's time. It should be done as requested by us right now in a very efficient manner. And we've eliminated a lot of requests. We just have 6 that need to be discussed, and it can easily be done in one meeting. So please do that. I would also like to speak regarding the proposed consolidation of housing offices into a single office, reflecting the position that's been adopted by the Cambridge Housing Justice Coalition. We really think that activities that support individual tenants should not be folded in to activities that develop and build housing. We think the mission is really different enough that it should retain its separate identity. And we think that identity should be housed in a new Office of Housing Stability, mirroring many of the accomplishments that the similar offices in Boston and Somerville have accomplished. And that would not only continue the work in support of individual tenants that currently happens in our city, but it would add to that a research and public information function and advocacy for new policies to reduce displacement and create affordable housing options for the lowest income residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Henry H. Wardis, followed by Lee Ferris, then Gail Charpentier. Henry, 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Yes, Henry H. Wardis, 106 Berkshire Street.
speaking on behalf of our Revolution Cambridge. With respect to Cambridge Street, I just want to make one simple point. That is that there needs to be a series of updates, perhaps at 3-month intervals, to let the council know whether, as the result of rezoning, there is an increase in the number of units available to low and modest income residents. If instead the rezoning results in a continuous flow of displacement, that is the loss of housing by destruction and rebuilding, then it is up to the council to review its rezoning and to reset the zoning parameters so that we do not achieve gentrification and displacement as the result of policies meant to increase affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lee Ferris. Lee, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Lee Ferris, Norfolk Street in the Port. I'm speaking for the Cambridge Residents Alliance on the issue of what to discuss in the second Cambridge Street zoning petition. I live a block from Cambridge Street, and I've gone to restaurants and small businesses along the street for years. The Cambridge Residents Alliance appreciates that the council lowered the heights to 6 floors along much of Cambridge Street in the previous zoning. We support adding requirements for active ground floor use, as is going to happen in the next piece of zoning. In addition, we joined with dozens of neighbors who would like to discuss other issues during this second piece of zoning. Although we raised these concerns during comment on the previous petition, the council did not take up these issues, and we see these as fine-tuning the previous zoning. We'd like the council to discuss these issues. Labs should not be allowed as of right. While labs are overbuilt now, there will be a time when developers want to build them again, and Cambridge Street would not benefit from having labs as of right. We think there should be 6 rear setbacks of 10 feet behind a building. People who live or work in the building would be able to use this open space, and the space should be permeable, not paved. The developer should hold a community meeting for input on a building over 3 floors, and if there's over 4 floors, there should be 2 public meetings because the taller building will have more impact. On the south side of the street, there should be a step back above the 4th floor. We'd like to see the space in front of Miller's River Apartments be open space, either through rezoning or deed restriction. We'd like to see the annual report of changes on Cambridge Street be required, as you've heard. In addition, the Residents Alliance thinks the city should proactively contact residents, residential and commercial tenants when a building is sold to inform them of this fact and explain their rights and any city's assistance. And we support the objectives and proposals of ECPT regarding active ground floor. If there's not enough time to have this discussion at the ordinance committee on Wednesday, then we'd like there to be an additional ordinance meeting scheduled, and we think it makes more sense to discuss these issues now than have a third petition later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gail Charpentier, followed by Dan Totten, then Beryl Lipton. Gail, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Gail Charpentier. I live at 19 Murdoch Street in the Port. and I have lived there 37 years. I also am a block from Cambridge Street and spend a lot of time walking through and supporting the businesses in that unique land part of Cambridge. I join other city residents in the following: to have the ordinance committee at its next meeting discuss all the pertinent issues in the second upzoning petition regarding Cambridge Street upzoning. I support the council's goal of active ground floor use, but this petition fails to address critical issues that many Cambridge Street residents have raised during the previous rapid approval process in January. These issues have already been described, but I'll quickly say the labs, we should not have them as of right. Open space, as has been described, setbacks, step backs, and others. I join other residents in wanting to discuss these issues at the next ordinance committee hearing, March 11th. If there is not enough time at that meeting, I call for an additional ordinance committee meeting to be scheduled to discuss these issues, which are urgent for the Cambridge Street neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dan Totten, followed by Beryl Lipton, then Helen Walker. Dan, 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Yes. Hi, thanks. My name is Dan Totten, 54 Bishop Allen Drive. I do want to start by saying I support some of the elements of Councilor Zusi's order about Cambridge Street, especially the piece around not allowing as-of-right biotech development, and I hope that the council can find an appropriate forum for that discussion. I also want to talk about social housing since it's on the agenda twice tonight. I've been a part of the team that has been working on this for years through the Cambridge Housing Justice Coalition. It felt like a major breakthrough last September when the previous city council unanimously adopted such a clear and specific policy order. Then we had a hearing in December, which we were told at the time could only happen if city staff did not need to be present because they didn't have the capacity. Now we've reached the report back date from the policy order 6 months later, and we've been presented with a vague timeline in which nothing will happen for 2 more months, and then it doesn't exactly inspire confidence that anything's going to happen before the end of the year. It kind of feels like we're kicking the can. I do appreciate that Central Square seems to be proceeding a great deal more thoughtfully. As a resident of the district, I can attest that myself and many of my neighbors are concerned about what the upzoning will mean for our ability to remain in the city. This isn't West Cambridge or even Mid Cambridge. There's still a lot of working class renters just trying to hang on my street. Come hang out on my block if you don't believe me. Another existential concern about Central Square is the fact that all of the cultural institutions and nightlife spots are located on large one-story parcels, the exact kind of parcel that would be developed under the rezoning. They are sitting ducks. I'm not against trying to find a way to build more housing in the square at 20% inclusionary, but do we care about having a cultural district? And don't tell me that we're going to get there through the Cambridge Redevelopment Authority's process. That is yet another process coming out of nowhere, blindsiding the neighborhood based on a study that had minimal community engagement. We can't rely exclusively on the public lots to keep the cultural district thriving. Finally, I just want to say I support a compromise of 2 minutes on public comment. Unless there are a large number of people signed up, I believe Boston switches down to 2 minutes at 80 people, which is largely in line with what we have. 1 minute is challenging and benefits people like me who have experience giving public speaking. So it actually has the opposite effect of the intent. Some people have said, oh, public comment's not inclusive, but if you lower it down to 1 minute, you make it even less inclusive. I'll give up the remainder of my 40 seconds to show that I'm bought into the 2 minutes as a compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Beryl Lipton, followed by Helen Walker, then Phyllis Breatholtz. Beryl, 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. Beryl Lipton, Oak Street, Inman Square. I am here to also conversation about zoning on Cambridge Street as part of the forthcoming discussion related to first floor retail. I mentioned previously to the council that I had submitted a public record request for more details and data related to the previous petition for zoning on Cambridge Street. And this was because understand data and details and the records and the information that is being used to create some of these proposals. And it is a bit frustrating that after having paid the fee, limiting the request to only the economic analyses that would have included affordable housing, would have included any economic analyses related to first floor retail, and paying $150 out of after 2 months. As you know, public records laws exist.
Beryl, we've lost your audio. Beryl? We're going to go to the next speaker. Beryl has 1 minute and 36 seconds. We'll try to come back to her at the end. Our next speaker is Helen Walker, followed by Phyllis Breatholds, then John Pitkin. Helen, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
Helen Walker, 43 Linian Street. Thank you for the chance to speak on Cambridge Street zoning and on institutional use regulations. We all want to get these right. Regarding labs as of right, our Cambridge Street says, limit certain types of lab use on Cambridge Street. Remember, a BSL-3 lab is suitable for work with agents that may cause seriously or potentially lethal disease through inhalation. That doesn't belong next to 6 stories of apartments, especially since it will be lower, exhausting up toward the apartments, and the mechanical system will be very noisy. What about that rear setback of none for 6-story buildings? CDD's June 2025 presentation to Housing and Neighborhood Long-Term Planning said, rear setbacks are used to transition from the main street to the neighborhood, and it gave that number specifically as 10 feet. So how did 10 feet become none? What kind of transition is that? What kind of views or privacy? In the future, are you planning to regularly paint and caulk the cement fiber panels by staging over the neighbor's property and trees? Then what about CDD's June 2025 narrative? Good main streets have some scattered open spaces with like pocket parks and plazas. There's even a photo called View of Millers River Apartments Set Back from Cambridge Street. That's one little open space, maybe the only one, since the zoning requires no open space for 6-story buildings. Please protect this particular one by rezoning it as open space. We also need to consider the unfinished business of institutional use regulations. It's okay to edit to conform with state language, but we're not done. We need to follow the planning board advice to secure agreement from our institutions to concentrate growth within existing campuses and to provide more student housing. Or we need a new home rule petition regarding a new exemption from the Dover Amendment. Never forget that the new Harvard House system and Peabody Terrace evicted over 300 families. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Phyllis Breatholds, followed by John Pitkin, then Jacob Brown. Phyllis, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Let me begin by saying to the city councilors and Mayor Siddiqui that I'm very appreciative of the fact that you have already lowered the heights of buildings on Cambridge Street, and that is of significant, mostly to 6 stories, and I'm very appreciative of that. I'm also speaking to the issue of the second Cambridge Street zoning petition, and am urging you to include in your discussion the following points, which were not taken up during the council's previous council discussion. I also want to acknowledge that having been given the charter writing, this gave some of us an opportunity to think a little more deeply about some of the issues that we're concerned with. So number one is that no labs should be allowed as of right, since this would do nothing to increase housing, which we sorely need. On the south side of Cambridge Street, there should be a step back above the 4th floor with a 45-degree angle to reduce the shadow cast and the impact on neighboring streets and homes because it will be dramatically impacted by the taller buildings. The space in front of Miller's Rivers Apartments should absolutely be preserved as open space through rezoning or deed restrictions. Our seniors, I among them, though I don't live in those apartments, deserve an open space, and that's becoming less available all over the city. There should be rear setbacks of 10 feet behind buildings, and it's critical that it should be permeable, not paved, so people who live or work there can use this space. It's very important that the developer should hold a community meeting for input on a building over 3 floors. And if the building is over 4 floors, there should be 2 community meetings since the taller building will have a greater impact. And I'm also very aware that when I walked along Cambridge Street a few weeks ago and talked to the managers and owners of many of the buildings, they had heard nothing yet of the plans for the street. An annual report of changes on Cambridge Street should be required, including both affordable housing units and market-based units. Those have been created and those that have been taken down. Any active floor space, first floor space that's been created or destroyed, and all the street trees that have been planted or destroyed. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity to address these issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Pitkin, followed by Jacob Brown, then Gary Mello. John, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is John Pitkin. I live at 18 Fayette Street. I'm speaking about the Cambridge Street rezoning. Cambridge Street is a unique neighborhood-focused street, and many residents would like to preserve this character. A neighborhood street is a microcosm of America, and I urge you to remember how Jesse Jackson described America. It is not, he said, like a blanket, one piece of unbroken cloth, the same color, the same texture, the same size. America, and I say Cambridge Street, is more like a quilt. Many patches, many pieces, many colors, many sizes, all woven and held together by a common thread. The white, the Hispanic, the black, the Arab, the Jew, the woman, the Native American, the business person, the environmentalist, the peace activist, the young, the old, the gay, and the disabled make up the American quilt. And so is Cambridge Street. It's a microcosm of America. The 2-year Cambridge Street study was a community effort to find a common thread, to hold the neighborhood quilt together. With your discussion and consideration of the study's recommendations, hopefully we can come up with zoning that does this.
Our next speaker is Jacob Brown. Jacob, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
We can. Please go ahead.
Amazing. Okay. Hi, my name is Jacob Brown. I live on Magazine Street in Cambridge. I just wanted to talk about, I guess, Charter Right number 3 and the proposed upcoming restructuring of the housing department and of the city's homeless services. I just wanted to comment, I guess, yes, I believe that with this restructuring and the change that it entails and the potential efficiency it entails, just to emphasize that this also represents an opportunity to change the structure of how we view housing as a city and sort of take it from the view that it's a commodity and the city is to best manage its, I guess, effective provision as a commodity to really being something that we can provide as a public good. And this would be obviously done by, I guess, just, yeah, this is something that could be done through increased programs for social housing. And I think that this restructuring is a chance to really put the city's emphasis on a social housing forward policy. I believe that with the housing department restructuring into, I guess, affordable rental programs and homeownership programs, that a potential pillar of this could be specifically a Department of Social Housing underneath this restructure. And that by continuing with this, I think that it would just be a great opportunity to show that the city cares about providing better things for its citizens. Furthermore, I think just that the current timeline of study for social housing is something that could be moved up, and that I would just love to emphasize that it is something that obviously is an urgent need in the city, and I would just love to see that Cambridge is able to emphasize in the structure of its very government that it's capable of and willing to provide social housing for its residents as something that's tenant managed. Thank you so much for your time, and I yield my time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Gary Mello, followed by Heather Hoffman. Gary, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, folks. My name is Gary Mello, and I live on Franklin Street. You guys don't see a whole lot of me. I'm not really interested in a broad range of topics, and tonight's comments largely repeat old stuff I last raised years ago. City Manager's item number 2 is the annual pat yourself on the back, multiple AAA bond ratings. While there are some vulgar terms for that ritual, let's just settle for self-gratification. A AAA bond rating is indeed important as an indicator of a market's confidences in our creditworthiness. It is not uncommon. Plenty of municipalities qualify. Boston is AAA bond rated, so is Somerville. New York City, which is a basket case, is a notch and a half below. Still impressed? What irks me is the suggestion that Cambridge is recognized by 3 major agencies. These ratings aren't earned, they're paid for, and that expense runs into 6 figures, serving only redundant purposes. One is plenty. A municipal bond rating is kind of like your own personal FICO score. If your bank gives you a complimentary FICO from, let's say, Experian, do you then run out and pay TransUnion and Equifax just to puff out your chest with 3 identical numbers? So this year, instead of congratulating the city manager for being one of only 27 cities dumb enough to waste the money for the triple, let's have him commission Dun & Bradstreet, the Kroll Agency, and Egan Jones Reports for another $100,000. Think about it. We'll be the only city in America with 6 AAA bond ratings with nothing worthwhile for the effort. P.S. No sneaking the parking sticker thing in tonight. That goes to committee.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Heather Hoffman, followed by Mark Truant. Heather, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Hello, Heather Hoffman, 213 Hurley Street. I'm going to start with the lawsuit settlement. I hope that the City Council will not approve any payment until the settlement agreement is made public. This is public money being spent, and the public deserves to know how it is being spent. With respect to the City Council rules, and so many other things, housing and zoning and all of these things, it seems to me that the City Council has decided that efficiency is the great thing that it should chase, and that good governance should always give way to what it considers efficiency. Cutting off public comment because it's inefficient to listen to the great unwashed. Cutting off consideration of what proposed legislation is based on and what it is expected to produce, and then determining whether it actually did produce that. You know, it just cuts off the string of wins. You pass something, you move on. It's efficient. I think that every last one of you is better than that. And I would be thrilled if you would prove it to me. With respect to the AAA bond rating, I am always amazed at the notion that Cambridge exercises fiscal discretion when you're spending $7 million on Linear Park and various other things that all of us could name. I guess they don't talk to people like me. People before me have said what needs to be said on Cambridge Street. You were ever so efficient. You got your win at the last minute, and you just do not want that interfered with, even though you knew that you had moved forward on something that needed amending. I don't see that as efficient, but I'm me and you're the electeds. Now, with respect to the housing and zoning priorities, I want to read you something. Inclusionary housing. CDD is engaged with a consultant who is working on a new nexus study and feasibility assessment in order to evaluate the inclusionary housing requirement and recommend possible changes. Funny thing that none of that was thought about before you passed all of these upzonings, assuring yourselves and the public that inclusionary zoning was perfect, and you didn't need to think about that because we were going to get that stuff. Really? Thank you.
Our final speaker is Mark Truitt. Mark, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Mark Truitt, Warren Street in Cambridge, where I've lived with my family for 40 years now. About Cambridge Street. Werner Gumpertz, an MIT professor and founder of SGH, a world-renowned engineering consulting firm, once said, "There always seems to be time to fix problems afterwards, but never time to design things correctly up front." We always seem to find the time afterwards to fix them when we have to fix them. His firm was frequently hired to repair buildings that leaked so badly people couldn't inhabit them, failures that took years and millions of dollars to fix. I worry we are seeing a similar pattern with the Cambridge Street upzoning ordinance. As enacted, it shows a striking lack of understanding of scale, form, and the relationship between buildings and open space, the things that truly make a city livable. If you would, just for a moment, picture yourself standing on Cambridge Street. If all of you know where the railroad tracks cross Cambridge Street, where the Grand Junction hopefully will be, the walkway, and look towards Lechmere. And what you'll see is 75-foot high continuous walls stretching more than half a mile to Lechmere on both sides of the street with no open space in sight. That's the outcome of the zoning that has been enacted. And some buildings along the way will be taller than 75 feet down by Lechmere, but also if people build with HHO guidelines. So and to give you a point of reference, because I don't know how many of you know many buildings that are 75 feet tall, but at the head of Cambridge Street and Quincy, running between Broadway and Quincy, is what was the Sackler Museum at Harvard. I don't think it's a museum anymore. And that building is 75 feet tall. So that could give you some point of reference. It was also designed by a world-class architect who did some things with the building to reduce the scale and effect of the mass. It also is a building that runs between Cambridge and Broadway, so it's very long that way, which in most of Cambridge Street,
Thank you for your public comment.
Okay.
Feel free to.
Mr. Truitt, your time has expired. Please email the remainder of your comment. We're going to go back to Beryl, who is joining us in person. Beryl, you had about a minute and a half left. Please go ahead.
Hello, thank you so much for letting me have the remainder of my time so I could run over here. As I said, I would like my records. I already paid for them. I asked for the economic analyses. It seems like they should have included things related to first floor retail, and I think it would be helpful for the conversation if we could have a better understanding of how those things are and aren't being considered. I don't much like having to be in an antagonistic relationship with my city, and I would just like to have some detail with which we can all be having a sort of common conversation. As I said previously, I didn't really have a problem with heights from the first petition. It was sort of the problem with how everything was coming together. And I do want to point out that what we do have from our Cambridge Street proposal did really highlight how important first floor retail was to everybody. Those pictures did have setbacks, and I fully support the idea of collecting more data so that as we go on and have more of these conversations, we can actually be looking at how progress is being tracked. I think that would be really helpful. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I do think that slow is smooth and smooth is fast, and I would like to see more affordable housing in this city, and I'd like to see it in a way that we can all be proud of. So, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That is all that were signed up to speak.
Thank you to those who've spoken at public comment. We'll now go ahead and, on a motion by Councillor Nolan, to close public comment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Public comment is now closed. We'll move on to the submission of the record. There are two sets of minutes: City Council minutes of November 24th, 2025, and minutes of the special meeting of the City Council on December 17th, 2025. On a motion by Councillor McGovern to place these two sets of minutes on file. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Those records have been accepted and placed on file. There are no reconsiderations. In the few minutes we have left, we'll go ahead to the city manager's agenda items and pull which items that you'd like to pull. So pleasure of the City Council. Councillor Sabrina Wheeler and then Councillor Nolan.
Number 6.
Councillor Sabrina Wheeler pulls number 6. Councillor Nolan.
Number 2, 3, and 4.
Number 2, 3, and 4. Pleasure of the City Council. Councillor Al-Zubi.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll pull 1 and 5.
All right, we've pulled all the items. Since we only have 3 minutes left, I guess we can go quickly to number 1. Usually the action is to refer this to committee, but first we can go to it. This is the communication transmitted from Ian Wong, City Manager, relative to the 2025 Annual Surveillance Report concerning City Departments' use of surveillance technology or surveillance data. Councilor Al-Zubi?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. According to our surveillance ordinance, as you said, we're required to hold a hearing on this report by the end of May. So I'll be planning to hold a hearing by late May in the Public Safety Committee on technologies that councilors and our community members wish to discuss from the report. And I will also notify my colleagues in advance of the hearing to submit any questions about the technologies that you care about or want to discuss in the committee so that we can ensure efficient use of staff time. I will also note that I'll be intending to hold a standalone meeting on ShotSpotter, otherwise known as also, I believe, sound thinking, because that is a topic of significant community interest. I'll yield.
Any other comments on this before we go ahead and refer this item? Hearing none, on a motion by Councilor Al-Zubi to refer City Manager Agenda Item Number 1 to the Public Safety Committee for a hearing, we'll go ahead. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. City Manager Agenda Item Number 1 is referred. So the time is almost 6:30, and so at 6:30, we will be moving to our next public hearing. So we'll come back to items 2, which were pulled by Councillor Nolan. She pulled 2, 3, and 4. Number 5 was pulled by Councillor Al-Zubi, and then number 6 was pulled by Councillor Sabrina Wheeler. So packed agenda, City Manager's agenda after, but now, with the time almost being 6:30, we will go ahead and switch to this public hearing of the City Council momentarily. So the time of 6:30 having arrived, the City Council will recess the regular City Council meeting and move to the public hearing pursuant to to Article 5, Section 5-1 of the Charter of the City of Cambridge to consider the recommendation of the City Manager, Ian Huang, on the reorganization of the Housing Department to consolidate city housing and homeless service programs currently provided across 3 city departments into one city department and resume the regular City Council meeting immediately following. We'll do a roll call to recess.
Councilor El-Zubi? Yes. Vice Mayor Azim?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Flaherty? Yes. Councilor McGovern? Yes. Councilor Nolan? Yes. Councilor Simmons?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Sabrina Wheeler?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zusi? Yes. Mayor Siddiqui?
Yes.
Yes. And you have 9 members recorded in the affirmative.
We are moving into our 6:30 public hearing on March 9th, 2026. The first order of business is a roll call of members present.
Councilor El-Zubi?
Present.
Present. Vice Mayor Azim?
Present.
Present. Councilor Flaherty? Present. Councilor McGovern?
Present.
Present. Councilor Nolan? Present. Councilor Simmons? Present. Councilor Sabrina Wheeler?
Present.
Present. Councilor Zusi?
Present.
Present. Mayor Siddiqui?
Present.
Present. You have 9 members recorded as present.
We'll now move on to public comment. Public comment may be made in accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 20G, and the City Council Rules 23D and 37. Once you finish speaking, the next speaker will be called. Individuals are not permitted to allocate the remainder of their time to other speakers. I ask that you state your name and address for the record. We have 5 speakers. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. We'll go ahead and start calling the public speakers, please.
Our first speaker is Carolyn Majid, followed by Lee Ferris. Carolyn, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Thanks. Carolyn Majid, 71 Reed Street. I'm speaking for the Cambridge Housing Justice Coalition. As the council discusses a possible consolidation of its different housing work into one department, this is the right time to consider the mission of the city's housing work and how we can accomplish it most effectively. Cambridge Housing Justice Coalition wants to call your attention to exciting and successful models from Somerville and Boston. Both cities have independent offices of housing stability with a mission that includes anti-displacement work with individuals and also policy work in support of tenant rights and anti-displacement policies. Here are some specific suggestions based on these models that CHJC proposes you adopt. First, separate the housing office that advocates for and helps to meet individual housing needs in Cambridge from the office that looks at what housing gets built and where, with a vision towards affordability and anti-displacement. These 2 kinds of work require different knowledge and skills. 2, whether or not they are in the same overall department, we do not think that people in either housing office should be supervising the other, given their different expertise. 3, the office that's focused on meeting individual housing needs in Cambridge should be an office of housing stability. This model is what Somerville uses very successfully. 4, the Office of Housing Stability also should take on additional functions as Somerville's does, including tenant protections and policy making and advocacy at the local and state level. And last, any housing departments or offices should have a research data component that compiles information about housing stock, as well as ideas for creative affordable housing programs. CHJC believes adopting these proposals will enable the city to meet the needs of its residents more effectively and to be much more creative and proactive about housing policy and tenants' rights. It's great that the new charter gives council an oversight role in the city's housing reorganization. We hope you will take the opportunity to delay any decisions tonight to give more consideration to these proposals and others you may get. This would have the additional advantage of giving the public a chance to learn that this discussion is going on and weigh in. Finally, we note that although many other interests in Cambridge have a dedicated committee that includes residents and provides a forum for residents to interact with city staff, for example, the Bike Committee or Arts Council, there is no such residents committee for housing. We propose that the city add a residents housing committee as a forum for residents to interact with staff on housing policy issues. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lee Ferris. Lee, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Good evening again. I'm speaking again for the Cambridge Residents Alliance and as a member of the Cambridge Housing Justice Coalition on the plan to align all housing departments. The Residents Alliance thinks that since the city's going to reorganize the various housing offices, it would be a good time to start reviewing their purpose and mission. We would like the mission to include anti-displacement work and policy support for tenant rights and anti-displacement policies. We have long wanted the city to create an Office of Housing Stability similar to what Boston and Somerville have. In addition to assisting individual people, it would collect and analyze data on what sorts of housing are needed, and it would generate policy proposals to meet those needs. It would examine how current policies are working. It would also propose and advocate for appropriate policies at the state level. We think that such an office would likely function better if it does not report to the housing department, which focuses on financing affordable housing and what housing gets built in the city. We very much appreciate that the new charter lets council oversee such a reorganization. However, we think not many people know about this reorganization yet, which of course is of the departments that work on the issue that is always top from residents' point of view. Therefore, we ask the council to delay any decision tonight so that you can consider the proposals from CHJC and others. Lastly, we would like the council to create a housing committee, similar, for example, to the pedestrian committee or any of the other 40 boards and commissions. This committee would include residents and be a place for residents to work with staff on housing policy issues. Again, for the most important issue in the city, not to have a comparable structure to the pedestrian committee seems like an opportunity to remedy this lack. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dan Totten, followed by Henry Wardis. Dan, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, hi, back like I forgot something. Dan Totten, 54 Bishop Allen Drive. I don't have written remarks on this, but I do want to speak as somebody who used to refer a lot of people to the Multi-Service Center and to Mora when I worked at City Hall. And I want to say I think it's a really, really great idea that that those two entities are being combined, because sometimes it's really hard when somebody's like, maybe they're homeless, but they're also facing eviction, or it's just kind of an edge case, and like, you know, you refer them to Mora, but they actually need to go to the Multi-Service Center to get CCANed, and it's just like a really overwhelming, confusing process, even for people who are providing those referrals. And that's not to say that either of them on their own, they both do amazing work, and I have so much respect for both of them. I just think that when they're together and when it's all like a one-stop shop, it's going to be a lot easier to serve vulnerable residents. I will say, though, I don't fully understand the decision to combine those things with zoning, because I do see zoning as different. And I know that in Somerville, they do have an Office of Housing Stability and an office that does zoning work. And I think that, you know, seems to work well. I worry about there being some kind of tension between, you know, a desire to focus 100% of our resources on upzoning every neighborhood in the city and making sure that we provide the most vulnerable residents with the support that they need. And I just want to make sure that as we combine all of it, that we're thinking about that, because I would really hate for the support to play second fiddle to the zoning, which is, of course, everyone's, you know, right now it's everybody's favorite thing, but the support's important too. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Henry Wardis, followed by Heather Hoffman. Henry, you have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Henry H. Wardis of 106 Berkshire Street, speaking on behalf of our revolution. Reorganization of our housing services is an opportunity to examine the city's housing missions and to create departments designed to achieve our goals. We suggest that one mission is to advocate for the housing needs of all Cambridge residents. For this purpose, based on the experience of several of our neighbors, we propose the creation of an Office of Housing Stability. This office would help rehouse the homeless, work to prevent involuntary displacement by eviction, and advocate for policies and programs to protect and enhance the rights of tenants and low-income homeowners. Within this unit, there should be a new commission or committee populated by tenants of public and private housing that facilitates communication between residents and owners and housing agencies. A second mission is to promote the preservation and creation of affordable, safe, and comfortable housing for residents at all income levels. This means promoting the most effective mechanisms, including social housing, a community land trust, privately built 100% affordable housing, and market rate housing. Historically, groups that take on this work spend a fair amount of time on zoning, and that seems appropriate. We feel that it is important to organize each of these units to meet individual missions. For this reason, separate unit leadership needs to be built on the particular expertise required to realize the two missions. Combining the two under a single leadership with one set of expertise would be inappropriate. Thank you for your work on this.
Our final speaker will be Heather Hoffman. Heather, you have the floor. You have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Hello, Heather Hoffman, 213 Hurley Street. I want to thank all of the people who spoke ahead of me. I have no expertise whatsoever in creating sensible corporate structures or governmental structures. The thing that I want you to think about is, first of all, what will be a setup that will allow planning to happen? What will allow oversight to happen? What will allow the people for whom this housing is created to live in it and to live good lives in it? I am unconvinced that those are the things that have necessarily gone into this. The notion that the people who create and oversee the housing would have anything to do with deciding what the zoning should be, as I heard earlier, seems like a complete and utter non-starter to me. You should not be creating all of your own rules. And I don't think that that's the expertise that people have. So please think about this in something other than victory terms. In, oh, we did another fantastic efficiency thing. We reorganized departments. Let's think about what will do the job that every city councilor presumably signed up to do, which is to serve all the residents of this city. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
There's one more speaker, James Williamson.
James, you have the floor. 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, James Williamson, Cambridge resident, longtime Cambridge resident. as usual, it seems like a tiny group of people are putting forward a proposal that almost nobody in the city know anything about. It's a typical top-down, we're going to decide what to do, we'll announce it, and we'll go ahead and pass it. And people are scratching their heads wondering what the hell is going on. You've got 6 people who were, paid enough attention, care enough about it, to participate in this so-called public hearing. I think the whole thing is disgraceful. It's so typical of the way things are done in this city these days. The people most affected aren't part of this discussion at all. I consider myself to be one of those people as an elected member of the board of the Alliance of Cambridge Tenants. Put a lot of effort into these issues. Nobody extended any invitation to us that I'm aware of to participate in any discussions preceding this effort, such as it is. At the very least, there needs to, I think we deserve an extensive conversation about the issues at stake here. And I do like some of the ideas that have been mentioned by some of the previous speakers, Dan Totten, Henry Wardis, the idea that combining some of it makes sense, lumping it together. I don't even know what the proposal is. And I'm I mainly tuned in to try to understand what it is that's being proposed here. And, I don't have a lot more to say because I don't know exactly what it is. But I do think it's so typical and so disgraceful that things are done this way in this city when we have to constantly be subjected to rhetoric about inclusiveness, about equity, about all that garbage, and it's never practiced by the people who are running the city. So thank you.
Thank you. That is all.
That concludes public comment on a motion by Councillor Nolan to close public comment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Public comment is now closed. We'll now move to poll calendar item number 3 on the city calendar for public discussion. So on a motion by Councillor McGovern to poll that item, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against say no. The ayes have it. The calendar item is pulled. This was a communication transmitted from Ian Wong, City Manager, relative to a plan to align all housing and homeless services and programs into a unified housing department. Just before I go to you, City Manager, I wanted to remind folks around the Charter, Section 5-1. The Charter speaks to the fact that the organization of the city into operating departments to provide services and administer the government may be accomplished only through an administrative order submitted to the City Council by the City Manager. No administrative order may originate with the City Council. And further on, it does say that an organization or reorganization plan shall become effective at the expiration of 60 days following the date the proposal submitted to the City Council, unless the City Council shall, by a majority vote, within that 60-day period, vote to disapprove the plan. The City Council may vote only to approve or disapprove the plan and may not vote to amend or to alter it. So I know that there's been various ideas and other suggestions that have been brought forward. Given the language here, we are limited in what we can actually do. I think those outstanding questions, I had a brief conversation with the City Manager today around process following that, but I wanted to just share that that's kind of what our charter says around we have the power to approve or disapprove, and if we don't act, it automatically within 60 days is approved. So want to get that starting off, but we'll go to the City Manager and then we'll open it up to City Council for their questions.
Thank you so much, Mayor Siddiqui. Happy for us to have this public hearing, and this is a bit of a new journey for all of us, so appreciate the work that we're doing together. Over the past several months, there has been a lot of conversation across the city manager's office, Department of Human Service Programs, Community Development, and the Housing Department as we've been thinking through this reorganization. I just wanted to introduce the team that's here this evening. These are the folks that are really doing the work on housing across the city. I have Chris Cotter, our housing director, Maura Pensack, who leads our Office of the Housing Liaison, Maria Mello, who directs the Multi-Service Center, Cassie Arnaud, our senior manager for housing development, Anna Dolmatch, our senior manager for home ownership, Alexis Buckley, our senior inclusionary rental housing manager, and not able to join us tonight, but very much part of the team is Liz Mengers, who's our manager of planning and development for Department of Human Service Programs. Her team really oversees a lot of the major grant programs and also coordinates the work on continuum of care. So this is the team that I think we are talking about, and what I would share in some of the conversations that I've had, the city is doing incredible work on housing, and as much as there's been some conversation about what's happening in Boston and Somerville, I think as we have the discussion tonight, you'll see that there is so much that is happening across these departments. What this proposal represents is, over the last couple of years, what I've actually seen is a lot of the work is already happening in collaborations across these teams. When I think about the work that was happening in 2024 through 2025 on the emergency family shelters that the state opened up in the city of Cambridge, when I think about the 116 Norfolk project, permanent supportive housing for people coming out of homelessness that opened, this is 60 beds in Central Square, or when I look at the municipal voucher program, all of these initiatives actually required significant coordination and collaboration across these teams, but we actually have 4 teams that are reporting across 3 different structures right now. The Office of the Housing Liaison report was created by the City Council and reports directly to the City Manager. We have the Housing Department that oversees the Affordable Housing Trust, as well as both housing development, homeownership programs, and inclusionary, sitting within community development. And then we have the Multi-Service Center and our planning and development group that sits within human service programs. And I think the structure both works, but actually having a more unified approach reflects the work that's already happening. And that's the proposal before us today. And so we are thinking about this as three areas with 5 divisions. And so in the memo, we are talking about a housing and services area that includes housing support services and homelessness program planning. So that's the first area. The second area is affordable housing programs, and this is the affordable rental programs and the homeownership programs that we're running. And the third area is affordable housing development and planning, which is really about development of new affordable housing. And that's where most of the work with the Affordable Housing Trust sits. I think there has been a little bit of conversation about the broader housing and zoning work that's happening within the city. Obviously, a lot of that is led within community development, but we would see zoning as a separate team. It will continue to sit separately as part of community development. And the broader mandate of community development to function as our planning department within the city will remain. And so I think just to clarify a little bit, we're really thinking about housing services, affordable housing programs, and affordable housing development and planning. And so I think those are the main points just to open with. We really believe that this improved organizational structure is going to better support staff in doing the work. It will be a single and clearer way to present the city's housing assistance programs and resources for residents and providers in the community, and it will create a structure that will improve some of that coordination that's already happening and create more clarity for all of us as we think about where this work really sits. So those are just some opening thoughts, and maybe I was going to turn it over to Director Cotter and Ms. Pensack to also speak a little bit about some of the vision behind this and how we came here.
Thank you, City Manager Wong, and through you, Mayor Siddiqui. So yeah, as the City Manager said, this is something that we've been thinking about and putting together over the last couple months. And it's something that makes sense to us as we look at the range of programs and housing support that's available in the city, and thinking of building and cementing some of the collaborations that we've seen develop over the last couple years into the structure so that we are more aligned, we're working together more clearly, that collaboration will then last on a go-forward basis. I think I'd say that this has been building for the last 4 or 5 years, I think. I feel like when we first started the housing stabilization program in response to COVID, it really brought us together in a way responding to resident needs and standing up a program practically overnight, and really began a period of collaboration that we've now expanded on and continue to provide. But recognizing that a lot of that collaboration is happening between certain staff on the teams. Teams themselves are still not integrated. Folks are still working in their individual teams without necessarily seeing the bigger picture or the full range of housing support and services that's available in the city through the various teams. So the idea here to bring the teams together to expand upon the collaboration that's now happening between key staff on the teams to help people working on housing programs be part of a larger combined team working to support the housing needs of the community and of residents made a lot of sense to us, and will help folks on those teams be better trained and understand what's available where, and the differences between case managers at the housing liaison's office and housing advocates at the multi-service center, and to have those staff better keyed in and connected with folks that are working with residents that are in our affordable housing programs, like the inclusionary rental program or our affordable home ownership program, to really build those linkages in a way that brings people together outside of particular needs, but kind of builds that network where we have a combined, cohesive team. And so we've begun to do that with just some discussion with teams about the plan, what we've been working on. We look forward to doing more of that, but are here today to answer questions from you all and to hear your thoughts about it. And we hope have your approval to allow us to move forward with this and continue that work. So a little bit more background, and I'll ask Ms. Penzak if she has anything to add.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Similarly, I think I'm excited about this. I'm excited that we will have one-stop shopping, a housing department, and everyone will know where to go, whether they're going for a question about affordable rental programs or to get rental assistance, or they have a tenant rights question. Right now, we work really well together, but there is a better way to do it. We've had a great decentralized model that I've believed in, that I've promoted. We've had the multi-service center providing a lot of the services for a really long time, and then 2019 when the housing liaison position was created, and then we've added staff along the way. We collaborate, we talk, but having one standard mission and one way of planning and doing the budget, I think will be much more efficient and much more effective. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to questions from the body. I'll say, please start with 2 questions, and then we'll go from there. Councilor Nolan, and then Councilor McGovern.
Thank you. First, I'm really glad we're here to discuss, and as the mayor noted and the city manager noted, the charter changes were a really significant improvement in transparency, in openness, and good governance. This would not have happened under the old charter, and I think it's better for everybody, the community, including, I think, the staff. So I'm thrilled that that is happening. And secondly, the fact is our city is a leader in pretty much all the areas of housing in the Commonwealth. Our work over the last 20 years in particular is truly astonishing in funding. We have tripled the funding going to the trust over the last 15 years in the provision of services, housing. The Boston Area Housing Report Card confirms that. Our services are at least on a par, if not above all others already. I would argue it's above, although we acknowledge there are still housing needs and not to be minimized. But it still is true, challenge anyone to challenge this, that if every municipality in the greater Boston area produced what we did and provided the services we do, the problem would be far less urgent and salient. I do have a couple questions, though. So we do phenomenal amount of work, especially in terms of housing stability, homelessness. I will say it would also help that sometimes I call Ms. Penzak, sometimes I call Director Cotter or CM. This will be great if all of us know there's just one point of contact, because I'm never even sure. I'm not as savvy about who it is who would take care of it. So I think just from that point of view, it seems beneficial. So the question is, will all the same points of contact for residents and also developers, right? They are also coming in and talking, although it sounds like that may be a separate thing. If I'm a developer producing housing, I will still go to zoning. So that's a clarity that would be helpful to know. And just, the expected benefits in terms of how the residents will be acting with the department would be a good thing to know as we move forward.
I'll take that and answer it and ask Mara if she's got anything to add. But I'd say the approach here is to not change things that don't need to be changed. So we're not envisioning any changes to core city services. So the team that you see here today would continue to be the team working on the programs that we now offer. Relationships will be preserved. Residents working with support through the multi-service center will continue to have the support from the same staff, same with the OHL. Developers who are working with us to build affordable housing would continue to work with the folks in our department that focus on affordable housing. And I think that's a little bit of the other thing that we've seen, and looking at how the department has evolved over the last 20 years. We're very different now than we were 20 years ago, given all the work that's happened, given all the success, given the new programs, new initiatives that have been put into place. So 20 years ago, we didn't have a team of staff that were working on our homeownership programs. We were still working with homeowners, but we weren't really able and staffed to work with them in the way that we are now. Same thing with the rental team that's working with now over 1,000 residents living in inclusionary rental housing. Same thing with all the work that we do with developers of affordable housing, given the tremendous amount of funding that we're able to offer and the other strategies that we use to advance that. I think the same can be said about Mara's team at the Housing Liaison's Office and the Multi-Service Center. We're much bigger than we were 20 years ago, and we've grown in a way that's not always coordinated, and here's a way to try to bring it in, make it more coordinated, and allow it to evolve more together rather than potentially separately. Mara, anything you'd add about?
Thank you. I don't have anything to add at this time.
Councillor Nolan?
Yep, thanks. That was my main question. Happy to hear other questions from the body, but certainly, as the mayor said, we will either support or not, and I'm fully in support, especially because the people I respect a lot in this city have just said they think it'll make their jobs even better, and it's already phenomenal services that we're providing, and I'm eternally grateful for that. Thank you. I yield.
Councillor McGovern?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you. Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I just had a single mom in my office today who was forced to leave her residence, family residence, due to some issues, and is couch surfing. And I had to basically say, well, okay, we'll talk to Maura, the family liaison, about what programs you provide. And then I'm going to call Liz Mengers about a family shelter, just in case you can't couch surf anymore. And then we'll talk to Chris Carter about inclusion. Basically, I didn't really name everybody's names, but that's the reality of those of us of the counselors who have folks come into our office or call us all the time with these types of issues. And when it's confusing or daunting for me to navigate all of that, it is incredibly difficult for the individual who was going through a traumatic time and worried about a lot of other things, rather than having to go to 3 different departments, talk to 3 different people, make sure they're communicating with each other. Well, I told this person this, and this person that, and this person that. I mean, it makes everything much more complicated. And again, not just for us, and we're the least important of that, right? It's for the people who we're trying to help and who we're trying to serve. So having folks together is important. We heard a lot in public comment about this whole, Somerville has this Office of Housing Stability. We've talked about this for a long time. We continue to point out that Our city does all the same things that the Office of Housing Stability does in Somerville, and you talk to some people in Somerville, they would actually think that we do more. I don't care what we call this. If it's going to make people happy to call it a Office of Housing Stability, I don't care. I care about the services being done and being offered and the way in which we're supporting people. And I have, again, great confidence in those of you who are doing that. So I guess my question through you, Madam Mayor, is, and this could be complicated. I know we don't have a whole lot of space in the city for city space. Is the plan to get everybody under one roof at some point? I mean, it would be nice to actually have an address and a place to say, you need to go to 52 Emmons Street or whatever, and then everybody's there and someone can go and then they get all the services and all the questions they answered. So is that part of this plan at some point?
Through you, Mayor Siddiqui, I think this is a great question. Short term, we are not proposing any major space reorganizations. I think longer term, there's conversations as we think about space and how we can put teams together. I do think that a lot of what this represents is, as you're noting, Councilor McGovern, getting people that are already working together, but it's the behind the scenes. It's being able to have regular team meetings. It's building a culture within a team where, even though these are obviously very different kinds of work, there are such strands that connect them. And so I think that co-location longer term is something that we would certainly aspire to. But just to speak a little bit more, I think what I do love is there's this end of the work that we're doing on the development side that I think oftentimes we don't see as connected enough to the service side. And yet, when we think about some of the permanent supportive housing projects, the policy work that was happening around how we figure out who's prioritized and who goes into that, there's actually been a clearer understanding over the last couple of years of how connected all of this work is. And especially as the Affordable Housing Trust has been funding more work to support the homelessness work that we're doing, I'm really actually quite excited about seeing this come together and seeing our teams just much more connected and spending time together.
Thank you. I just
McGovern?
thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Yeah, I hope we continue to think about organizing people together. I just think of, one of the things we always talk about with Kendall Square is that, having all those companies side by side where they can talk to each other and meet with, just being in the same vicinity is important. I sort of picture a time where, Ms. Penzak could be walking out of her office and bump into Director Cotter and say, oh, by the way, just, as opposed to picking up a phone or dropping an email. So having people under one roof will create a much closer relationship, and I think will ultimately be better for the people that we're all trying to serve. So I hope that doesn't, I know it's a long-term thing, but I hope it stays on the radar. I think that would make things much more effective. Thank you.
Councilor Zuzzi and then Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Mayor Siddiqui. I also want to commend all of you for your work. This makes sense to me. I mean, to currently have 4 teams working in 3 departments sounds a little problematic, and even if you're all connecting with one another, so it makes sense. My question is, so who will the housing department report to?
Through you, Mayor Siddiqui, the Housing Department will report to Director Cotter and then to Assistant City Manager Peters.
Okay.
Councilor
So,
Zuzzi?
yes, yeah, thank you. Well, I knew people would be reporting to Housing Director Cotter, but it wasn't clear in the memo that then he would be reporting to Assistant City Manager for Community Development. So that's good to understand. Again, I think this seems like a great idea. The question I had is, I just want to make sure, that Housing Director Cotter has the time to do like visioning, like you're gonna have a pretty big department now. And I don't want you to lose sight of, evaluating who we're housing, what our housing needs are. And I'm really excited about the social housing idea, so I really don't want us to lose that. And I agree the community land trust idea, if this group has a a credible business plan. I hope we can support it, but I want you to have the freedom, along with managing this broader staff, to be thinking about how we can best house our middle class and just solve overall, do a real assessment of housing needs, as well as doing all these major things that are so important. So, thank you. I yield.
Councillor Flaherty?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I just want to say this is a no-brainer, and I applaud all of your efforts. And Councillor McGovern beat me to the question. Housing all of these services in one location, I think, is essential. I think the population that is in most need of the services requires that public-facing component. Like the young lady that visited Councilor McGovern today, I happened to speak with her, and I bumped into her on the street on Mass Ave a moment ago. And just in that brief interaction, I can tell you the fact that she recognized, someone in City Hall that's willing to help is a big deal. So to the extent that we can find space to have this centralized essential services all located under one roof, I think is critical. So that's the only point I wanted to make, but thank you very much.
On this side, questions? Councillor Al-Zubi.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the information and your work on this. I think it's a great conversation to be having, and I know, like you mentioned, Madam Chair, the charter requires us to hold the hearing, but hopefully the conversation doesn't start and stop here, especially right now when I am now understanding that this will still be housed under CDD, even though we are consolidating the different services and pieces within the housing department under CDD. And I think that's going to beg the question on how either this will serve our residents or fail to. So I guess some questions I'm holding are, right now, what is the value add in combining these under CDD, which in my mind right now, services are distinctly different from like zoning and development. So could you walk us through that piece of it?
Sure. I would say, right now we have, the two major departments that are housing the different housing work stream departments would be Human Services, where we have the Multi-Service Center, and then Planning and Development, which is managing a lot of the continuum of care and the grants that we're getting, and then Community Development. In terms of, which side of the house to put it on, it felt like community development made more sense. Obviously, at some point, you have to decide where to make some sort of division. But I think when I looked at the work that the teams are actually doing, there's a lot more work that Liz Mengers and the planning and development and continuum of care work is happening, or Maria Mello and her team in the Multi-Service Center. A lot of that work is really shifting over closer to the work we're doing on developing new housing, the work we're doing serving people who are already in affordable housing programs, compared to what else is happening in human services. And so youth programs, senior programs. I don't think it's necessarily like a black and white issue. I think there are a lot of shades of gray in terms of which side to lean on. But I would say, the sense of community development as doing only planning is also not entirely correct. When I think about the work that the Economic Development Department is doing, there is a lot of service programs that they are building and putting out into the community with small and local businesses. And so it's not that I think community development is only doing zoning. And I think ultimately, as we're doing this work, there is a lot of how we think about supporting these teams. And so the work that we're doing in the background on both ensuring that community development has the infrastructure to manage a lot of the major grants that are coming through, and I think ultimately support some of the frontline work that's happening in the Office of the Housing Liaison and the Multi-Service Center. All of that is on our radar, part of how we're thinking about rolling this out, and I think an important part to get right.
Thank you
Councilor Zubie?
thank you for sharing a little bit more about that. So I'm understanding that you all were trying to figure out whether it was going to be between DHSP or CDD, and I'm curious, was there a discussion around a third option of going independent and structuring the housing department as its own, right? Like I know Councilor McGovern brought up this idea around folks caring about an Office of Housing Stability. We know that Boston and Somerville are, they both also have that, so I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about discussion around it being its own versus being housed under CDD.
Ms. Penzak, do you want to, or you or Director Cotter, do you want to speak to that?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I think a couple of things. In terms of it being part of CDD, we really see it as being part of the housing department that was named as a housing department. So yes, it's connected to CDD, but it's also the existing now housing department. And in terms of it being part of DHSP, I agree with the city manager that, you know, it could go sort of either way, but if you think about the fact that DHSP has many, many, many different programs, and we have something called the housing department, and a lot of the work we're doing is housing and housing services, it just made sense. I think it's clearer for people, for the residents, for the people that we serve, that it is all part of one and that we have a full continuum. I think the other thing is that, you know, in this way, and I think it's come out a little bit in what Director Cotter and City Manager have mentioned, is that the services, we're looking for the services and the on-the-ground work to inform or to inform more the planning and development and the kind of housing that we're looking to build. In terms of the Office of Housing Stability, I just want to call out for a few minutes. In my previous job, I was around when the Office of Housing Stability was started in Boston, and I am very familiar with the startup of the Office of Housing Stability in Somerville. And I think a really important piece to know is that neither of those cities had or have a multi-service center. And when those offices were started, and still today, much of the work that they do is exactly what exists with the multi-service center. Then in 2019, the position of housing liaison was started, and that has grown. So again, and if you match through the years, and I haven't looked at it this past year, but the capacity, the staffing levels of our decentralized model have mirrored or matched or exceeded, actually, either of those offices of housing stability. So it's very much kind of a name is a name, but all of the services that exist within both of those offices of housing stability do in fact exist through the multi-service center and OHL and P&D planning of the homeless services and the contracts.
Councilor Zubie.
Thank you for sharing a little bit more about that. And it's helpful to know that how the two cities, Boston and Somerville, have approached their work and how the multi-service center incorporates that work specifically for our community members. I know Councilor Nolan also brought up better understanding some more of the specifics, like it'd be helpful to know, where the staffing continuity is, budget allocations would be, to understand the workflow of how things would function, or like when you say like this will help inform the planning and development side of the department, like what does that mean or look like? And having that context would be helpful in better understanding, is this going to be the most effective way to approach our restructuring? I'll yield. Thanks.
Through you, Mayor City, I'll add just a little bit in that way. Yes, we think it will be, and I think for the same reasons that housing remains a department affiliated with CDD. A couple years ago, housing was broken out of CDD as a separate department, and at the time, I think we talked about whether it would be best separately situated, but thought it best to remain part of CDD so that we remain involved in planning work, given how important housing is, and that we're there. We don't do zoning, but we are involved with a lot of zoning discussions. So just to clarify, The housing team doesn't have a formal role with the zoning amendments that you all see, though oftentimes we're part of the discussion because we want housing to be there as a consideration as we look at changes, as we think about the impact of zoning or other programs and planning on housing, so that we've got that there. So for that reason, when housing became a separate department, we wanted to maintain our connection with CDD, and so we do that. So I continue to report to the Assistant City Manager for Community Development, and we are part of a greater universe of divisions and departments of CDD, which includes several programmatic divisions, the Housing Department, the Arts Department now. And I think for the same reason, we want to bring the housing support teams at the Office of Housing Liaison Multi-Service Center and the Planning and Development team at DHSP closer to the work that we're doing on affordable housing, so that we're more aware of what they see, what they need, what the impact is, and can have that present in the discussions that we have when we're talking with the Affordable Housing Trust about the next new all-affordable building where there's a need for services, or when we're talking about zoning or other planning considerations, so that it's all part of that forward-looking. I think it's really a combination of the planning and the operational, and we have become more service-oriented ourselves as a department, as we are now offering access to more affordable housing to residents than many affordable providers, just to bring it together and to have those connections there, both to the planning side, but I think also importantly, so that we have the support and connections between folks that are working with residents who are housed through our programs and folks that are working to support residents in the community. The services that are available through the Housing Liaison's Office, the Multi-Service Center, are available to anyone, but we want to make sure that folks in affordable housing assisted through the city or through the affordable housing providers that receive funding from the trust are particularly wired in there, because we have seen a need for that support and that assistance, and we've seen that it's successful. So I think that's for why we want to bring things together and have things more closely aligned, and in the bigger picture, why it makes sense to have that with CDD. I'd also say, given that the Housing Department continues to be aligned with CDD, we continue to get a lot of support from CDD administratively. So with regard to our fiscal team, with regard to HR or communications, data, that's all support that we're getting from CDD. And to think about having housing be somehow separate from CDD, we'd then be talking about how do we replicate some of those things in a way that's probably not the most efficient way, where we're able to do that and get that support from staff that are working to support divisions at CDD, the Housing Department, the Arts Department. So a little bit more on that.
We'll go to Councilor Sabrina Wheeler.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Through you, Councilor Elzubi and some of the other councilors raised some of the questions, comments I was going to already. But no, I think previously we've had housing functions scattered around a number of different departments: DHSP, CDD, Housing Liaison Office, Multi-Service Center. Thinking about how we, what Somerville and Boston have done, how we align those things. Is important. I do think there are some pieces that we can still learn from them around data analysis, policy advocacy, which I know the city does some around. It was good to see the city testifying in support of the real estate transfer fee, but thinking about specifically how do we build in those functions in a housing stability, housing department. And then there was another point. And then I hear the point about the name being a name. To that point, I think Multi-Service Center in particular is a very confusing name for folks as compared to things. I do think that part is we should do some more thinking around. So looking forward to continuing these conversations. I yield back.
Anyone who hasn't spoken who would like to speak on this? Any further questions from the body? I'll just say briefly, I think I agree with a lot of what's been said around the reorganization plan. I think some of the questions and comments that came up during public comment, for example, having like a further committee for residents and so forth, I think it's separate from some of what's laid out. And so I'd say to the folks who've come and talked about some of these other ideas. I think, certainly we can consider them at a later point. I will say on the substance, though, I agree with the issue around just being in one space. I know we have issues with space, but I think that would be really helpful, because right now people are going through the Broadway, as you know, here. It's just, it really undermines kind of this when you're looking for cohesion. The other point around nomenclature, I do think we can get creative here. I don't think what we have is the best thing. But I will say, I do agree that I do think we do a lot more than these cities. But because people are so tied to the name, it's kind of, they're not going to look behind the surface. And so I do think that's not something for today, but something that I think I would ask and push that we think about. Okay, can we think about a new name for some of this work? So those are kind of my points, but I think where we are, based on what has been presented and what I've come to know and experience myself, I do think reorganization in this way for now makes sense. And then some of the other things that have been brought up, I think thinking through what that process looks like, if the council is interested in exploring any of those other issues that were brought up in the public. So we've heard from everyone. As I mentioned in the beginning, the votes here would be to approve this, to deny this. Factually, anyone can move to table this, but that would require 5 votes. And it would also mean that we'd have to come back within the 60 days with the public hearing. From what I've heard here, it seems that largely the majority is supportive. So I will go ahead and entertain a motion to approve this order. So we have a motion by Councillor Nolan to approve this order. So we'll go ahead and do a roll call. And we'll, at the same time, place the calendar item communication on file.
Councillor El-Zubi.
Yes.
Yes. Vice Mayor Azim?
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Flaherty? Yes. Councillor McGovern? Yes. Councillor Nolan? Yes. Councillor Simmons? Absent. Councillor Sabrina Wheeler?
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Susi?
Yes.
Yes. Mayor Siddiqui?
Yes.
Yes. And you have 8 members recorded in the affirmative and 1 recorded as absent.
The reorganization plan is approved and the matter is placed on file. On a motion by Councillor Nolan to adjourn, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. So we've adjourned from the public hearing. We're going to go back to our regular scheduled programming for the city manager's agenda. We have items 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to get to. It's almost 7:30 as a time check, so we'll go ahead to city manager agenda item number 2.
I think I personally.
We'll go ahead before we do that. We'll do a roll call. Moving in back to the city council.
Assuring a quorum. Councillor El-Zubi?
Present.
Present. Vice Mayor Azim?
Present.
Present. Councillor Flaherty? Present. Councillor McGovern? Present. Councillor Nolan? Present. Councillor Simmons? Absent. Councillor Sabrina Wheeler?
Present.
Present. Councillor Zusi?
Present.
Present. Mayor Siddiqui?
Present.
And you have 8 members recorded as present, 1 recorded as absent.
We are going to city manager agenda item number 2, a communication transmitted from Ian Huang, city manager, relative to the city of Cambridge retaining its AAA rating from the nation's 3 major credit rating agencies. Councillor Nolan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Siddiqui, and through you to the staff. Thanks so much for these reports. Great news overall, solid ratings, continues our track record. I also want to highlight and thank the staff and appreciate the refinancing of the debt, which saved $2 million. I noticed that in the reports. And also I want to note that the key element of strength to remind us all as we enter this budget season is the availability of our funds, including Restricted funds, which are supposed to represent the benchmark, is about 35% of budget, but also the unrestricted funds about 10%. And we do meet those goals, but it is critical to their rating, which of course then reduces our borrowing costs, which is one reason we were able to save $2 million. So as we tie this all together, I think it's important for us in this, we're going to enter a fairly challenging budget time that we're doing great, but we have to continue these. It's the one area where I think the city can be proud to be a little bit conservative. I'm very happy to have confirmation that we're in a strong position, and yet, having read through some of the reports, there are some notes of caution. Notably, pension and our OPEB and debt service are areas for monitoring and caution. It is raised in all of the reports that it's kind of within some parameters that are set, and yet it's something that is higher than many other municipalities and similarly situated cities. So given that those are the items that I picked out as ones, and we know that, the debt services, because we do phenomenal work, and yet we do need to, and our own plans are to make sure that doesn't blow up further. Are any actions or contemplated reviews or changes being considered to ensure that those elements in particular are taken care of and don't cause us to have an even more challenging budget season? Because as we know, our projections are on just a pretty steady state, not even the worst case. We're going to have very large increases in our tax rates again next year. So any comments on those particular ones? And then I have one more question. Through you, Mayor Siddiqui.
CFO Spinner?
Okay, yes, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Nolan, for your comments and your questions. I think I mostly want to say, and then I'm going to ask Budget Director Taha to share a few words, but each year when the city goes through this process, it's an extremely rigorous process that we go through to pull information together and to prepare both for our meetings with the rating agencies, but also to pull together all of the information that we have to pull together in order to put together a bond sale, using our bond counsel and putting out an official statement. And so I do want to first appreciate all of the work that the Community Development Department, the Assessing Department, the Budget Department, the Finance Department does to do this each year, because I think it is important for us in order to continue to be able to invest in our infrastructure. The fact that we both continue to get our AAA ratings, which contributes or is in part is fully responsible for how low of an interest rate that we get. And in fact, this year with our true interest rate of, just below 2.2%, the lowest interest rate that we've actually had since 2021, I think was really a great result for us. And as you mentioned, we had, made a decision because we were able to refund some older debt. And the fact that by refunding or essentially refinancing that, we were able to save $2 million in future interest costs on that. So with that, I think I'll turn it to Mr. Jennings to sort of talk about some of those items that the rating agencies actually particularly noticed about our financial management that really has resulted in these ratings.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, to Councilor Nolan, you got it exactly right in terms of the messaging that we got back from the rating agencies. I'd like to always point out that we don't budget to get a AAA rating, but we get a AAA rating because of how we budget and how we manage our finances. The rating agencies really look at criteria related to the local economy, the city's management, our financial situation, including our reserves, and our debt burden. And getting the ratings is really a strong outside objective opinion about the city's financial strength, our financial stability and planning, our policies that we have in place, and notably our ability to withstand outside factors and economic factors that a lot of times are not in our direct control. And I think we've seen, especially in this current environment, are really important. And there are some benefits that come along with getting a AAA rating. We, as Ms. Spinner noted, we can borrow money at lower rates. And it really demonstrates our fiscal discipline and sends a strong message that the city is really a safe and reliable investment overall. And I think it also, provides, it validates our position as a fiscal leader, and that can a lot of times translate into other areas as well, just in terms of being at the forefront and how we're doing things. To your question about some of the items that the rating agencies noted as areas to watch moving forward. We're familiar with these areas. We understand, the potential for impacts related to things like pension liability, OPEB, our debt burden, and I think you'll see, as you have over the last couple of years, more communication and collaboration with the council as we look to address some of these issues and come up with strategies looking forward. But again, we're very proud of the ratings that we received. It does take a lot of work, but I think, it's a team kind of effort. It's city council, it's management, it's the departments, and it's even, community buy-in on the importance of being strong and fiscally sound, because that's really what's allowing us to make the kinds of investments that we do in the city that we're all very proud of.
Councilor Nolan?
Thank you. Yes, and approve all of that hard work that went into it, and yet also both pension and OPEB and debt service are some of those items that have been noted as ones that are slightly above where we would want. And I know, for instance, with I think it was the pension or OPEB, we actually extended the timeline, and that gave us an ability in our budget over the last few years. However, that just puts it off. That's the unfunded liability across the Commonwealth. I know we're not the only ones. We're ahead of some, but we're also, and ours is so large, it's really important to keep that in mind. So I appreciate that we're watching it closely, and certainly we stand here to work with you to address that in the future. The other question I had about any assessment of how the rating agencies understand the risk for our financial future. It was noted, of course, that we have really strong underlying financials, and yet it was also the concentration of our economic engines is viewed as a credit challenge. 5 years ago, it might have been a strength, because who was going to attack higher education or biotech? And this year, it's everybody knows that financially there's a big attack on exactly those two of our strongest economic drivers. And also one of the other areas of risk that was noted was the environmental risk, that it's something that affects us directly, the hurricanes and the weather changes, which will be very relevant to our planning, our capital investments in sewers and climate resilience. That's also noted that is something that is something of a risk. So in those areas, just what's the summary of the assessment of how the rating agencies understood those? Because I think while they've been mentioned in the past, particularly that environmental risk has just gotten more and more challenging and worse, and we know for sure the economic engines has changed because the entire economy and economic conditions for our two largest sectors, higher education and biomedical, have changed pretty dramatically since the last time. So any thoughts or again, rating agencies' comments on that we should know? And then that was my second question. I will yield.
Oh, through you, Mayor Siddiqui, to you, Councilor Nolan, thank you for the question. And I may let, maybe the city manager will chime in as well. But I think the overall tenor of our conversation with the three rating agencies, because we were very forthcoming in our own, presentation of data about what has happened, in this moment that, of a commercial softening in the region and in our community as well. But also noting, the overall strength of the local economy is still there. And, Harvard and MIT are significant institutional anchors in our community. We have very high per capita income, very high education, very high education of our population. In addition, still a lot of economic activity happening in Cambridge. And so as development is slowing down, one of the things that, we noted is that some of the slowdown of the development leaves that space for some of that vacancy to get absorbed. So the market responding in some ways and allowing us to absorb. And so, yes, while, there is a caution in our, over where we have labs being one of the most significant sectors, for me, I felt that the tenor of the conversation and even in the reports, not a great deal of concern, something to keep an eye on. But I think that one of the things that they really noted was how the city is planning and doing our own analysis based on some of those potential weaknesses and macroeconomic headwinds that we're facing. And the fact that we're working together to put in place those budget targets that we have in our real estate property tax targets in order to conserve that excess property tax levy that we have, duly noted in I think in all of the rating, as well as doing things like beginning to pull back on some of our capital expenditures in order to slow down our debt. I think it was definitely noted, we have such strong financial policies and procedures. So I think the upside of that was a real acknowledgement that the city's financial management and overall management, right, overall team management, because that is one of the things that they note as well, is strong, and we are looking ahead in our planning.
We'll move to Councillor.
One more,
Could-
and on
Councillor
the
Nolan,
environmental
do you have a
risk.
question, or
Yeah,
we've
it was
already
part of
asked
the old
you?
one, the environmental risk.
Through you, Mayor Siddiqui. Yeah, just in terms of the environmental risk, I think one of the things that, every year we talk to them about are things that we're doing in terms of protecting the community in terms of climate change, increased flooding risk, right? So, and that comes both in terms of the planning that Claire talked a little bit about. When you think about the flood viewer, you think about the resilient zoning that the council passed. Those are really critical ways that we're protecting the community, protecting new development, protecting existing residents. We also, when we're talking and overviewing the capital programs that we're doing, this year, one of the big pieces of work that we're funding is in the port. And, that work is being led by the fact that that is our most vulnerable neighborhood in terms of flooding. And so it is a priority investment area in terms of our capital program. And similarly with the combined sewer overflows, River Street, and a number of our other capital programs. So both on the planning side and the capital implementation side, we're really talking about how do we make our community more resilient to climate change, less susceptible to heavy flooding, and so that is a theme that comes out both in the presentations and the conversations that we're doing with each of the rating agencies, and it is sort of a fundamental piece of the work. And I think it does lead to the fact that people are really being thoughtful about these risks and working to decrease the risk to the community.
We'll go to Councillor Zusi, and 2 questions, and then we can go again. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair Siddiqui. Fantastic work. I feel very lucky that our finances are so ably managed and have been for so long. So I thank you for your leadership. I wanted to ask, so what is the total amount of our debt now? So we've had, before our new obligations, we had $694 million in debt, and then we asked for another 110.6, but then we had 42.2 million to refinance. So the number I came up with was just over 750 million in debt. Is that right? Because somewhere in here it listed as 800 million, but if we were refinancing old debt, wouldn't we be at like 750?
I'm going to ask, through you, Mayor Siddiqui, I'm going to ask Deputy Finance Director Michelle Kincaid to speak to it. But you are right that essentially the refinance debt is not new debt. we only borrowed 110 in new debt, and I think perhaps was that in the in one of the rating agency.
Councillor Zuzi?
Somewhere in one of the reports it lists the debt at 800 million, but I thought it was 750.
I think through you, Mayor Siddiqui, I mean, I think probably it's helpful. There's a snapshot in time in terms of how much direct debt we have. I think that's about 700 million in 2025, which is the latest number. In terms of when we come and authorize additional debt, from the conversation we were having about capital in the last Finance Committee, I think we just want to also note there's debt that we authorize that we can then go out on the market to borrow. But then exactly the process of issuing bonds is what ends up adding to the total direct debt. And then as we move out over time, some of it is that we're taking on new debt, but we're also paying off existing debt.
Yes.
So that 700 million is also coming down as we pay off some of the bonds that are now at the end of their 10 years. So there's a bit of a cascade in terms of as we ramp up on new projects, but those older projects we're paying off. So I would probably say we just have to figure out like which date you want, and then we can kind of give you the number. But trying to calculate sort of forward in terms of new debt we're taking on, you'd have to also get the number of debt that we're paying down, which we'd have to look up.
Okay, I'd love to know that number. As Councillor Nolan was saying, yeah, I also was noting that we're doing a great job, but people are concerned about our level of debt, and they also are concerned about our pension and OPEB obligations. And in the
It is 800.
Which report is
690
this?
plus the 110.
In
800. Yeah.
not the Moody's. I don't even know. It's the.
Councillor Zuzi, do you mind speaking to the mic?
Yeah, I will speak to the mic. On page 124, it says, and maybe you can help me understand this better. So it says the city's net OPEB liability of 728 million was 6% funded as of fiscal 2025 and represents 5% of personal income. I don't know exactly what that means. Maybe you can help me understand it. It sounds a little scary to me if we have a liability of 728 million and it's only 6% funded. And I know this is something that you've been watching carefully, but I know we have a very generous pension program. We have generous salaries. We have a generous pension program. But I wonder if in the long term that's something we'll need to be thinking more about. So through you.
Yes, through you, Mayor Siddiqui, to Councillor Zuzi. So OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. And so essentially that, so the three things that they note there of our long-term liabilities, debt, and which we're talking here about, and the number is approximately 800 million in debt now that we've added the 110. But as the city manager says, as we get to the end of FY26, so 694 was the amount of debt that we had as of June 30th, 2025. And as you know, our debt service payment this year is 109 million, of which 75 million of that approximately is actually principal. So we're paying off principal every year, and then we're adding some debt. And so I think that, in terms of our long-term liabilities, debt is obviously a significant one. We have very strong debt policies around there in terms of how much debt we want to be paying off at any one time as a percentage, our debt service as a percentage of our operating budget. And we have very strong policies in terms of how quickly we retire our debt. So typically, at this point, we have a policy that says we retire 70% of our debt within 10 years of borrowing it. And at this moment, actually, the rate at which we're retiring our debt is about, I think, around 85% of our debt is retired within 10 years. So that lets you know that any year we are paying off debt very aggressively, even as we are borrowing more to continue to invest in our infrastructure. So that's one piece. Then we have our pension liability that Councilor Nolan noted, that we did in this past year change our funding plan to extend it slightly. So we are now have our funding plan has us fully funding our pension liability by 2029. So the plan is that by 2029, we are fully funded in our pension liability, meaning that our pension fund will have enough assets to essentially be self-supporting to support our retirees' payments, essentially.
Councillor Zuzzi?
Yeah, fantastic, and we can
Can I-
talk later. Yeah, because I was confused by on page 109. This is in the Moody's rating report. It lists the debt, and then it lists other long-term liabilities, and it lists 592,709. So that doesn't relate to pension.
Well, the third piece is this other post-employment benefits. And so, beyond our pension system, we also have obligations for the health insurance of our retirees. And so that OPEB is our liability related to our health insurance obligations, our long-term health insurance obligations to our retirees. And so we have been making some modest investments in moving towards funding that. And our long-term plan is, as we hit our fully funded point with our pension system, it is to move some of the funding that we have been putting into getting our pension system fully funded. Then we will start moving those funds into trying to get our OPEB liability funded to bring down that long-term liability. So we have this overall plan, both in debt, pension, and OPEB, to basically address all of those liabilities.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. So anyway, I'm glad that you're planning for that, and yeah, that makes me nervous. Thank you. I yield.
Other questions from the body? Councillor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. One question, two parts. Ms. Bennett, how important, in your estimation, was the excess tax levy to the bond rating? And secondly, what is the obstacle, if there is any, to refinancing a larger portion of our debt?
Question number one, through you, Mayor Siddiqui, to Councilor Flaherty. I think it is a very important part of our overall fiscal picture, our excess levy capacity. That, along with our reserves, both our assigned and unassigned reserves. So both of those components are very important in terms of the rating agency. And so, we talk a lot about free cash. They don't call it free cash in the rating agency or in our financial, but those are our unassigned fund balances. So both of those things are extremely important. In terms of refinancing, it's pretty technical. Once we borrow the money, we can't just immediately refinance anything. There are terms in our borrowing, and as there comes a moment at some point, several years in, I would have to ask Deputy Finance Director to give us the specifics, but at each moment that we have a older bond that is available for refunding, we take a look at it to see if it makes sense for us to include it in our bond sale. It costs us a little bit of money to reborrow money. There's financing costs, as I'm sure we're all aware of when we borrow for our own homes. And so we do that analysis on an annual basis to make a decision if there is any old debt that is eligible for refunding and if it makes sense for us to do it in that year.
Councillor Flaherty.
Well, and I just congratulate you on the refinancing interest rate you were able to obtain for the city. That's exceptional.
Vice Mayor Azim.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I forgot what number we settled on for the debt. What was the current rate?
Through you, Mayor Siddiqui, go ahead.
Interest rate or the total debt number?
It's approximately 800 million, including, going back to where we were on June 30th, 2025, and adding the new issue.
Got it. So my understanding, because I had many curious questions, I think my first time around about the AAA bond rating as well, is that the reason to get it from 3 agencies is that different lenders will use different agencies as metrics or baselines. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Siddiqui, I don't think that's the way it works. I think that it is when we have AAA ratings from all 3 rating agencies, it actually results overall in our having an overall lower rate. And while it does, cost us a little more to go to 3 different rating agencies, it is also just a long-term beneficial for the city to get the absolute lowest rate each time we go out to the market to borrow.
Got it. And that's basically because even if we saved like 0.01%, that's like $80,000 a year because our debt is so large. Got it. All right. I just wanted to clarify that up. Thank you.
Any other questions on this from the body? Yes, Councilor Al-Zubi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for all this information. I actually just want to leave us with a comment on the framework here, because as we praise the rating, I just want to reflect on not forgetting our vulnerable community members. Many of us attended the First They Listen forum hosted by the Cambridge Economic Opportunity Commission, which was a very insightful and productive event. And that night we heard from a vulnerable community member talk about how food insecurity makes it very hard for her to feed her family. And when we talk about fiscal responsibility, we're talking about her and her son going hungry. Our AAA bond rating is a testament to our community's success. But the question I'm holding is, what does that success mean if it comes at the cost of our neighbors going without food or shelter? The purpose, in my opinion, of strong finances is to ensure a dignified life for all of our residents, and not necessarily to protect a rating from the judgment of for-profit credit agencies, because when we adequately serve our residents, we will also attract more investment, if anything. I'll yield.
Any other comments, questions from the body before we go ahead and place this on file? Hearing none, we'll go ahead on a motion by Councilor Nolan to place City Manager Agenda Item Number 2 on file. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. City Manager Agenda Item Number 2 is placed on file. We now move on to City Manager Agenda Item Number 3, transmitting a communication from City Manager Yan Huang relative to the 2025-2026 Green Jobs Initiative Report. Councilor Nolan.
Thank you. Before I just ask my question, since some of the staff is new, it might be good through you, Mayor Siddiqui, if the city manager introduce the fabulous Green Jobs team.
Thank you so much. Through you, Mayor Siddiqui, I would like to introduce Assistant Director Walsh and Director Mintz. Maybe, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Hello, we're so happy to be here. I'm Sue Walsh. I'm the Assistant Director for Adult and Family Services for the Department of Human Service Programs.
And I'm Susan Mintz. I'm Director of the City's Office of Workforce Development.
And then Ms. Ariano.
We are joined tonight by our relatively new Green Jobs Specialist, Rebecca Eliano.
Councilor Nolan, your questions?
Thank you. Yes, I'm thrilled we have a Green Jobs Specialist. It's been a long journey to get here. As many of you know, this annual report is a requirement of the Green Jobs Ordinance, was passed in 2023. We had a report in 2024. We didn't get a report in 2025, so this is the first report. We've kind of skipped a little bit. At some point, it would be helpful, maybe as part of our charter required ordinance review down the road, to ensure that we have a calendar of annual reports, not just from this, but from others, the others. Anyway, thanks to staff for getting this report to us. Again, a little delayed, but I'm thrilled to meet the staff in place. And after talking with staff, they've indicated we'll also get the next updated report possibly in June in order to get back on track to the reporting schedule. So I just want to ask a question about what is that timing, and I hope and expect the updated report at that point will include, which I asked the staff for, SMART goals in order to track progress over time. So my question is that the correct timeline that we might be able to do that, at which point we might then have a Health and Environment Committee meeting after that, whenever that updated report is in, and has the staff moved to developing SMART goals for the Green Jobs Initiative?
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you. And a heartfelt apology for not getting the report in on time. And we are planning to submit the report in June with a focus on the work. As I had said to the counselor, we're not going to see a lot of change in labor market information in 1 year, or even in 2 years, or a significant increase in the number of training programs that are available in 1 or 2 years. And so we are tracking that. What we hope to see is an increase in awareness among residents, partnership development with employers and training programs, and that's what we will have in our report, and we will track those and name those with SMART goals.
Great, thank you. And yes, we all recognize that we're in an environment where at the federal level, and even there's some possible rollback at the state level, but we're totally understanding that we need both and, that the federal government is not doing its work, and yet we critically need it to address emission pollution, also jobs in the clean energy sector. So we can do that locally. And also possibly with BUTO and many of the other decarbonization efforts going on, we actually will see some action, and this was particularly started in order to ensure that our local residents are going to be able to have access to these technical and critically important jobs. I will yield, and I know that Councilor Al-Zubi, who is here, she sent me her questions in case she wasn't able to stay, but I know she has a couple questions as well. So again, thanks for the report. I look forward to it, and I look forward to working more closely with Ms. Arellano.
We'll go to Councilor Al-Zubi and then Councilor Zusi.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I know I got the chance to reach out to you all. I'm glad that I can be here. I'll focus on one of the sets of questions that I sent to you all, focused on the strategies being deployed, especially when I noticed that we are identifying that recruiting more women, people of color, and youth into the program is a particular challenge. So what are we trying to do to address that? Have we considered marketing campaigns like Sunny Cambridge to increase awareness? Because I did a quick Google search and I didn't see anything necessarily come up. So like, what are ways that people are getting access to these opportunities? How are they finding ways to engage? And have we considered reaching out to any specific low-income housing projects like the Ringe Towers or Newtown Court?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for that question on outreach. So I think in particular, you had noticed that there was a new program starting up in Somerville, and how we had gotten the word out about that. But I would say that for most of the programs that we are aware of, we are working through our Cambridge Employment Program, which is Director Mintz's staff. And so those are individuals and residents who are low income, usually individuals of color. And so if you're coming to us, you're going to hear about these programs. In terms of getting the word out to folks who are unaware of these, that is what Rebecca is going to put most of her energy into, because we're seeing from all of the reports from Mass CEC and others that there just isn't awareness. And so we are targeting women, people of color, low-income residents for outreach. And Rebecca, with the team, is in the process of developing marketing materials right now that will start to take some of this information that is pretty inaccessible. There's a lot out there already, but packaging it in a way that we can get it out to individuals who are living in public housing, to the schools. So we're looking to create marketing materials for particular audiences, and we are also updating the Office of Workforce Development website as required by the ordinance, and wanted to do that anyway, so that there will be a specific landing page on green jobs.
Councilor Al-Zubi?
Yeah, thank you for sharing a little bit more about what you all are doing to address that piece, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that work evolves. I'll yield.
Councilor Susi?
Thank you, through you, Chair Siddiqui. Great report, and I realize this is really for 23 and 24, so I look forward to seeing the 25 report. I just wondered, how many Cambridge students participate in the Somerville HVAC program? Sounds like a great program. And I also wondered about how many Cambridge residents are in green job training programs. And I apologize because I should have shared those questions earlier, but I'd love to have a sense for that. And I realize, as Councillor Nolan was saying, this may be a challenging time to be recruiting people for green energy jobs when our presidential administration is not supporting green jobs. But I'm eager to hear how many students are engaged.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Right now, with the Somerville program for HVAC, it's a brand-new program. Residents must live in an environmental justice neighborhood in order to be eligible for that program. So in Cambridge, that's a very small number of neighborhoods. And it's for adults. It's not for youth. There are 2 Cambridge residents that are enrolled in that HVAC program now. The program started in February. We've also had at least 2 residents that have gone to other HVAC programs since August. And that's what has come through our door that we're aware of. In terms of individual training programs that are funded through the more regional system, I asked for data on how many Cambridge residents have been enrolled in green jobs training over the last 3 years. None. And that's federal money coming into the system. So what that says is there's no awareness of these programs. There's not a lot of programs, but there's also no awareness of these programs. And so the fact that we have 2 Cambridge residents from environmental justice neighborhoods in this brand new program in Somerville is impressive.
Councilor Susi?
Yeah, well, I'm grateful to Councillor Al-Zubi for asking about outreach efforts, because clearly that will be very, very important. Thank you. I yield.
Councilor Simmons?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. Rasmussen. I don't think it's just outreach. Sometimes there are other social impediments that you may not have drilled down deep enough. Years ago, when we had the Green Jobs program or some very similar initiative, what we found was some people didn't have access to a vehicle. And that was a huge piece. So I would not put this on just outreach alone. I think there has to be something in the screening when you get applicants to apply if they're applying. If it says on the application you must have a mass driver's license, well, they're not going to apply. And so maybe you take that off to get them in, because getting a mass driver's license, now you have some other kind of impediment, is something that you can, you can get around that. So I don't want us to put our eggs all in that we don't have enough. We're not getting the word out enough. That's number one. Number two, people don't necessarily. There's a feeling amongst some people in some quarters of the city that you can apply to the city, but you're not going to get a job. So just using the usual methods of outreach aren't always going to work. You may have to use ambassadors, people that know people, putting some money into people that provide the contact with people. They have credibility. The city's a great place. We all love it. We're all that in the tic-tac. But at the end of the day, if you don't look like the people you want, they're not coming. So it's a little bit more. It's not as simple, in my opinion, about outreach. As someone who's done outreach a lot, know how much it takes to get people to cross the threshold. So I would like you to just kind of revisit that a little bit and come up with some other practices and ways of doing outreach. We have an outreach person that we've hired that does that for the city. Have you sat down with that individual to develop an outreach plan? I'm just curious.
I would say we've not sat down with that person yet. We are, as you know, within the Office of Workforce Development and within DHSP, very familiar with the barriers that our residents are facing that prevent them from accessing or sustaining participation in programs. So I absolutely think you are spot on. It's licenses, it's access to vehicles. So there is an issue of outreach, and with Rebecca on board, we need to go where the people are. We need to go into the public schools. So we do intend to do that. And I think one of the things that you're speaking to is another part of the challenge, is that we can get the word out and we can reach out to residents, and the residents need to have the skills. And so it's making sure that even as we're introducing these opportunities, what we're finding is that folks aren't coming to us necessarily for the skills that they need. And so how do we make that match? For adults, it's going to be a longer road if you're not coming with those skills already. If you're, Rebecca is working with individuals who are adults, who are interested in these fields, but just don't know how to access them. Those folks are going to be relatively easy. It's individuals that are coming to us who either have no awareness or really want these opportunities, but need some skill building.
Councillor Simmons?
I think I called you by your wrong name, but that's what I do. So it comes with not enough airflow. I guess, so what I'm basically saying, because we have an Office of Community Engagement, let's use that individual in her department. Let's be a little bit more aggressive. I think and I shouldn't say aggressive, because I think you're being aggressive, but we're doing the same thing the same way, looking for a different result. It's not going to happen. We have to really look at, before we can roll out a program, or while we're thinking about rolling out a program, what has to be a part of it is how do we do authentic community engagement? And I'm going to argue, sometimes you have to put some money, the city has to, if you really want the program to pay the dividends, you have to put people in front of people that look like them, that they trust. It doesn't mean, did you say the woman's name is Rebecca? Okay, hello, Rebecca. Welcome to the fray. I'm sure Rebecca's very nice, but if Rebecca walked up to me in my neighborhood, I might give you side eye because you're not part of my community. So all I'm saying is we have to work at finding folks, I'm going to call them ambassadors, that go out into the community to make those connections, and or going to departments or organizations or agencies that have relationships, be invited by them, so you become a trusted ally. Otherwise, you're not a leader, you're just out taking a walk. So I'm going to ask that we do get a report back in writing to tell us what the community engagement plan is going to be. You know, every one of us here have a good idea what a community engagement is, because we do it every other year. It's called getting elected. We do door to door. That's how we get elected. That's what you might have to do. Not to say that it's a campaign, but it is. And the campaign is to get people to, in this program that we fund, that funds your position, and we want it to be successful. I yield the floor.
Councilor McGovern, and time check, it's 8:12.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I would agree, and I appreciate the conversation about the need to do outreach and to connect with people, and part of that being also finding out what are the obstacles and how we can help them overcome those obstacles. It's one thing you can notify everybody in Cambridge about a program. That's great, but if they can't access that program because they can't get to that program, or usually we don't pay people for participating in these programs, right? So do I have to give up my job to go participate in a program that maybe someday down the line is going to get me another job where I can make more money? That's a lot, to ask of people. So if we can think about, not just the outreach and letting them know about the programs, but also, helping them overcome those obstacles. And I know you think about that, and I just think that's important. I also appreciate I think on page 7 here, he talks about the collaboration with Pathways, the Job Connector, the unions. It's making sure that we're establishing those relationships. And, I know that it's difficult to talk about adding new expenses to things when we're talking about financial issues facing the city. But, and I think, I know Mayor Siddiqui has talked about this too on the school side, but it boggles my mind that RISTA doesn't have programs for electricians and HVAC, right? I mean, I've said this a million times. I said this when I was on school committee. You cannot outsource an electrician. You cannot outsource a plumber. These are good jobs when they're connected to unions, good jobs when people can go into business for themselves. And, maybe they're not so good that they can help someone buy a $2 million house in Cambridge, but there are a lot of, they are the gateway to the middle class, and they have been. And so, really, having lots of conversations and talking with the school department and RISTA, it can't all be about the innovation economy and biotech. There are, good old-fashioned labor jobs that you can do very well in. And so as long as I hope we keep those conversations going and look at expanding, RISTA into some more traditional trades. I yield, Madam Mayor.
Would anyone else like to say anything before we place this on file? I'll just say, Rebecca, I look forward to working with you, especially on the RISTA piece and other things. So my office will be following up on that as it pertains to the school committee work. Would you like to say anything?
Thank you. First time. Thank you so much for all of your questions and your valid concerns. I am so excited about this job. It really comes at the intersection of my passions of sustainability and equity work. To speak to Councillor Simmons, I think he made a lot of really good points there. Just to give you a little bit of background, I was born and raised in Hawthorne, California, right on the border of Inglewood, Compton, Lenox, Watts. So I know what it's like to come from a very hard background. I understand that Cambridge is not LA and it's not Boston. And I've also been an active community organizer for well over 8 years now. And I can really appreciate your comments when you say it's not just, I hope somebody sees the flyer. It's making those connections. It's reaching out. I don't mind cold calling, showing up, and really explain to folks where they are, why this is important and why it's needed. And to also speak to some of the things that was brought up tonight. We know that the biggest barrier to entry into green jobs for women, people of color, youth, and low-income folks is simply lack of awareness. So that's where I'm really excited to pound the pavement and get our campaign launched to really educate the residents of the city of Cambridge all about green jobs. And I think all of your points are valid and very well taken. And thank you, Mayor Siddiqui.
Thank you. We look forward to working with you. So we'll go ahead on a motion by Councillor Nolan to place City Manager Agenda Item Number 3 on file. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. City Manager Agenda Item Number 3 is placed on file. We're going to move on to City Manager Item Number 4. Transmitting communication from Ian Huang, City Manager, relative to the appropriation of the Mass Save Community First Partnership Grant in the amount of $256,500 to the Grant Fund Office of Sustainability Other Ordinary Maintenance Account. These funds will be used to contract for outside services to support energy efficiency programs for residents and small businesses. Councillor Nolan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Siddiqui. Quite exciting grant, very needed to support energy efficiency programs for residents and small businesses. My question is, so what is the expectation of the impact of these funds? The memo states that some of the funding, and I don't know how much of it is some or all of it, or how much of it will go to mailers and marketing, and we've just talked about outreach and the effectiveness and the importance of outreach. So do we have evidence that steps we have taken along those lines are effective? I've received mailings as a resident in Cambridge to sign up. I've already done my Mass Save things every few years that I can, but I'm really curious about what were the results of those mailings, how many people actually signed up, how many followed through, how many actually did took the steps to ensure that their carbon emission, their emission pollution went down. So I'm just curious, as again, we're talking about outreach, that this is a lot of money. It's $256,000. What exactly do we expect? Have we set goals? And given our past efforts at marketing and mailers aimed at people to take some of these steps to take advantage of Mass Save, what were the results, and how have we assessed the impact? And I will note it's critically important these days because the state legislature is now possibly eviscerating the program of Mass Save, taking away $1 billion of the $4.5 billion. The Senate has not yet done that, but the House already did, and it's definitely on the chopping block, partly because people don't understand the intersection of every dollar that this goes to that gets people, excuse me, to work on their energy efficiency. It will save them $3 in future energy costs. So this is not that we're just spending this money. We know that when we spend it on energy efficiency, it reduces not only pollution, but future spending. But I'm very curious about how we're going to allocate these funds and specifically laser focused on the effectiveness.
Deputy City Manager?
I'm hoping Chief Sustainability Officer Julie Wormser is online.
I am.
Oh, perfect. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Julie. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And through you, Mayor Siddiqui, so this is a 3-year grant. It's the second time we've had this grant through Mass Save. So it gives us about $85,000 a year in order to hire a full-time person. It's not a staff person, it's from All In Energy, and we get access to all their technical support as well. Almost all of that money goes to that staff time. About $2,500 is to actual materials. We do mailings, but it's not from this grant. So this is part of our Community First partnership we do with Eversource. We provide a lot of information to people, as you mentioned, about Mass Save, both the technical support people can get and also the subsidies and grants people can get. This is our program that is for non-BUTO buildings. So it's for all residences and for small businesses. And the answer in terms of how well do we know we're doing, we haven't gotten the data on energy use post participating in our programs until this round of Mass Save. So we look forward to having that effectiveness data, and that has limited our ability to do A and B tests on what works best, but we'll continue to do that. So this funding, it's about a quarter of our overall budget for non-BUTO community energy programs. I would say also in terms of the bills going through the State House, we are right in the mix working in both the House and the Senate to try to get the best we can, not just on Mass Save, but on other policies and funding to move us off fossil fuels. Mass Save is getting hit. The Senate is much more pro climate. We're hoping we can win that back. I also think, though, that the original bill filled by the Healy administration really did some very important reforms to Mass Save that made it much easier for renters and multifamily buildings to use, and that's been a weakness of the program. So we not only want to bring that funding back, we want to point it towards the folks who are most challenged in terms of energy conservation and decarbonization.
Councilor Nolan?
Thanks for that. The reason I thought, it says it's to perform outreach services, and it specifically says a staff person will actually be developing and sending mailers and other marketing collateral. So that's fine, but again, I know we have some data. This is the second grant. We've tracked it before because I've asked for it and gotten it, like how many of the people who actually get the Mass Save audit then take the next step. Do we not have any of that data for the last year?
We have data. So this should be our 5th year. Even before it was called Community First Partnership, it was called Mass Save Municipal Partner. We've been doing this since 2021.
Right.
We can tell you data on our efforts, which is to reach thousands of people, not just with mailings, but in person. We can tell you how many people we talked with through the Cambridge Energy Helpline. But what we haven't had until this 3-year renewal of Mass Save is those folks we spoke with, address by address, did they do something with it? So we don't track in terms of that follow through. We track in terms of our effort to connect people with these programs, because we didn't have access from Eversource for that data until this round.
Okay,
Councilor Nolan?
Thanks. That's just surprising because I have data in my office from when we tracked it in the past and we followed up ourselves. So I encourage us to do that ourselves, even if it's not direct from the program, because otherwise we have no idea if this is even working. So I know
Yeah.
it may be challenging, but I know we had it because I got it a couple years ago. So I encourage us to look in our own records and figure that out because it's critically, this is what we need to be doing, and it's really important for us to do it because we know every single resident across the city needs support. So I'm glad that's going on, but I do hope that at the next time we talk about this, we will be able to get that data because I know it exists, and we should be following up with people even if it's not coming directly from Eversource. And so with
Yeah,
that,
we can follow up with you.
yeah,
Councilor Nolan.
that'd be great. Thanks. And with that, again, we just need impact very much
Sure.
and to help all the residents across the city because this is an important program. Thank you. With that, Mayor Siddiqui, I yield.
Any questions on this appropriation before we do a roll call? Hearing none, on a motion by Councilor Nolan to appropriate these funds, we'll do a roll call.
Councilor Al-Zubi.
Yes.
Yes. Vice Mayor Azim.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Flaherty. Yes. Councilor McGovern. Yes. Councilor Nolan. Yes. Councilor Simmons. Yes. Councilor Sabrina Wheeler.
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zusi.
Yes.
Yes. Mayor Siddiqui.
Yes.
Yes. And you have 9 members recorded in the affirmative.
The order is adopted. We do need to place the communication on file on a motion by Councilor Nolan to place that on file. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. That is placed on file. We're going on to City Manager Agenda Item Number 5, a communication transmitted from Ian Huang, City Manager, relative to the 2026-2027 housing and zoning priorities. Councilor Al-Zubi, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I have a question about the social housing piece of this. I noticed that the timeline for social housing doesn't start until May, and even then it only says scoping underway through what seems like the end of the year. I'm representing a large number of constituents and community members who want to see immediate action on social housing. So are you able to better help us understand what is meant by scoping underway, why that activity doesn't begin until May, and why it's the only step on the timeline?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor Siddiqui. So we are really excited about this ambitious work plan for this calendar year. It really is looking at city council priorities, regulatory requirements, and kind of a culmination of our housing strategy to kind of wrap up some of the zoning priorities that we started the last couple years. And social housing is a new idea. We're excited to look at it. We do know there are some ideas about how to, whether that be a task force or other format, to better define what social housing is and then think through what the financing and operational models will look like. And so we have seen some ideas that staff are commenting on, and we are working with some counselors to kind of refine that. And we do hope to start in May, but the actual details of the frequency of that and what that looks like is still yet to be determined.
Thank you. I appreciate more of that information. I will say it's a bit disappointing to see how the pace of this conversation has been moving. I know that there are other housing priorities and pieces that I see on CDD's plate, and I know that there was a policy order passed unanimously last fall that called for a response by this early spring, and it was in the intention that's also being mindful of CDD's plate. Like, you all have a lot to do on your plate, and I do appreciate the effort you're pouring into the work that you do. The hearing that also happened in December was a good start to the conversation, but my understanding is also that staff weren't present because they didn't have the capacity to participate, which is okay, again, recognizing that there's a lot on your plate. We're also now 6 months later after the council unanimously asked for something with explicit steps on what things we can look at, and we're sitting here having to wait another 2 months, and that 2 months is waiting for things to start being scoped and getting underway. So I don't think that's necessarily the best way to go about this, and feel that it encourages the type of cynicism that we see right now with the way our government works. So between the two pieces on the policy order and then the hearing, I believe there's been a level of clarity given on what social housing means and to its residents. It's publicly owned, it's tenant governed, and it's permanently affordable. And we came in with that, my understanding of the last council, we came in with recognizing that we want to look at things like funding models, for example. We know that we have community members that have put a lot of years and time into this work to help move it forward and brought a lot of detail around what this could look like. So if staff need further clarification from the council on finer points, I think it could be great to get like a report back on a memo of some sort that lays out some of the trade-offs for our consideration. I know you also brought up the task force. We can also work about going that track path so that we can also discuss these topics more deeply. I just don't think I agree with this timeline. We can't really just put the majority of our staff resources into zoning discussions and think that it's going to produce the solution that we need to the crisis. I really do think that we need to start being more serious about conversations around prioritizing social housing. And just before I yield, I just want to note that for the record that I'm leaving right now to attend a religious obligation as we have entered the last 10 nights of Ramadan. So any additional thoughts that I have, I can raise them with the city manager as needed, and I'm sending all of my blessings to you all. I'll yield.
Through you, Mayor Siddiqui, I think happy for us to continue to have some of these conversations. I would say that one of the challenges has been more clearly scoping what we mean by social housing, not necessarily in terms of those high-level principles, which I think have been very clear, permanently affordable, publicly financed, publicly owned. I think the challenge is situating what the more hybrid model being proposed looks like compared to what we have today. I think Cambridge is very unusual in terms of the very high inclusionary rate that we currently require. And so when we think about market rate housing developments that have a 20% inclusionary requirement, 20% inclusionary in many other parts of the country is seen as social housing. And in fact, the public financing to actually create those permanently affordable units at a 20% threshold is often seen as social housing. I know that's not what we're talking about here, and we're thinking about higher thresholds like 30 or 40%. And that's where the challenge is in terms of how we think about public financing. And so if we're publicly financing, if we're publicly financing 100% affordable housing, that is our current sort of bread and butter, is everything we do through the Affordable Housing Trust. We're deploying, $250,000 to $300,000 per unit of public taxpayer dollars to produce 100% affordable housing. And the advantage is we're leveraging state and federal tax incentives and tax dollars. The challenge in terms of how we're figuring out this model, which we're very committed to exploring and pushing forward, is what is that middle ground, where if we're actually producing social housing at a 40% threshold, but we're paying for that without any state or federal tax credits, we're going to be spending a lot more for those affordable units. And so I think some of that is both working out the model and thinking through how we create that hybrid, and I would say ensuring that we're doing it together. I think one of the nervousness, one of the issues we don't want to get into is setting the wrong expectations in terms of setting up a task force, but we haven't actually figured out the appropriate scope. I totally understand the frustration and the feeling that we need to move more quickly. And I think that's part of what we're saying. That's also where it does take up a lot of staff time to work out those details. And I think once we get that nailed, we're actually able to move a lot faster.
Councilor Zoubi?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, I definitely hear you on some of those comments. I will say you missed a specific tenet to social housing, which is tenant governance. And so when how we approach these models, a big piece of how we define it, whether you're engaging with market rate housing and inclusionary zoning, that piece of tenant governance also helps identify really what sticks out these other models that we're seeing across the U.S. and across the world. So definitely want to highlight that piece, but I think Director Cotter, you also wanted to share a comment or two.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Siddiqui. Yeah, just to add, I think the other piece that we've thought, and we were at the meeting in December, and appreciated the presentations on social housing and the perspectives and the models, but I think the other takeaway that we had was there really is more that we need to talk about, because in some ways the social housing model is very similar, and in fact there may be some overlap with some of the 100% affordable housing that we do that is fully affordable. Some of the same groups may be interested in developing that type of housing. Certainly the community control, public ownership makes you think of public agencies like the Cambridge Housing Authority that owns and operates housing. Also brings to mind the community controlled housing that's operated by nonprofit housing providers. So I think that there would be helpful to have a bigger conversation. And I think the other piece that came up was looking at the investment that would be needed and thinking about how those dollars are invested, as the city manager said, and what's the return in that? What are the goals? What is the expectation for efficiency of that investment in terms of leveraging other resources that might be available, or trying a new model if that's something that's if there's a different piece there that would be good to pilot. I think those are the discussions that I think we want to have with the council. The other piece that's affecting the work plan is a little bit of, I think, what we mentioned here as well, is just the volume of work that we have underway with the fully affordable developments, and taking away from that discussion a clear idea that the folks that are working with the affordable housing providers themselves, those of us that are working with the resources that are available to the Affordable Housing Trust really need to be in those conversations, looking at it from that perspective. And right now, that team is really overwhelmed with all the AHO developments that are moving along, and kind of looking at this. This is where we think that probably best slots in, though, and you'll get a report on the AHO at an upcoming meeting. You'll see that the volume of activity with the AHO developments is really off the chart. It's been hugely successful, which has really had a big impact on our capacity for that planning and development work. So looking at that and factoring on top of other things that we've got going on, just thinking about when reasonably we think we could come to that and give it the attention that it needed to really surface some of those questions that came up from that meeting.
We have to get going. There's a lot of other people who would like to chime in, Councilor El-Zubi. So I'll give you one last word, but then we have to move on.
Yeah, I was going to say, through you, Madam Mayor, I appreciate you sharing more about the affordable housing piece, and it's great to see that work happening, and really definitely don't want this to just be kicked down the road. I'll yield. Thanks.
Vice Mayor Azim, and then Councilor Nolan, and then Councilor McGovern.
I just had a quick point up for my colleague, Councilor El-Zubi, just saying that I know that it looks like the committee is a little bit delayed, or the working group perhaps. I was going to say happy to think about committee hearings as well, or if you would like, I think that we can also do smaller discussions, perhaps with staff and like less formal settings. I think that maybe like getting a few colleagues together and just talking about it, I think we can probably move through some of the details quicker, that maybe don't have to have a committee hearing, which can take a little bit of time to organize, but I'd be happy to be part of those.
Yeah, on that, my office has been working with Councilor Sabrina Wheeler on some of this, so we'll figure out a way to get others involved on next steps on that piece. So we'll go to Councilor Nolan and then Councilor McGovern.
Thank you. Very excited. I think it's really great to have this work plan in front of us so that we can understand what the work is. I have two questions. One is related to the multifamily zoning review and annual housing review. I understand there will be some report relatively soon. Even if we don't have all the information, we're going to have some more information after a full year of the change from multifamily. And we're already seeing some impacts across the city, some of which we're thrilled with, and some of which maybe we may be asking questions and saying, that's the time to say, should there be adjustments or amendments? The question is there an expectation that there will be more than this one meeting that's here, which is the joint NLTP and Housing Committee presentation? Because I do think at some point, once we have some conversation and we have those reports and we get some more understanding about where we're moving, is that the expectation? I just wasn't sure how much of this plan was baked in.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mayor Siddiqui. So the idea is to kind of launch that discussion with the annual housing report to kind of serve as a baseline of what have we been seeing, how could we refine and reform the zoning moving forward, and that there would be subsequent city council hearings on the topic, and I believe Councilor Zusi is planning to hold some neighborhood and long-term planning committee hearings and joint housing committee meetings on the topic, and then ultimately get feedback from a range of stakeholders, and then look to staff for some recommendations on how to reform multifamily zoning if that's the path forward.
Councilor Nolan?
Thank you. And now the second question is, so when will future alewife zoning happen? It's not on your list, which I understand is just 2026, but I don't want to forget that there were parts left off when we zoned the crowd, and I know that ACM Peters was central to the community process that led to a very successful rezoning based on a moratorium that this council passed. But there was some parts of that were not included. The Terminal Road connection is still in the air, the small triangle near the traffic circle, the Fresh Pond Mall. I know we had all said we would get to that eventually because that was not part of this, and yet it's, again, the last piece of Cambridge that has not gone through this. I understand that, the MBTA development might affect the timing, but that's in a different part of that area. And we do need to be proactive, especially because Health Peaks plans are now being refined. They have now are moving towards going to the planning board. The MBTA study, I think it was MBTA, but there was or Department of Transportation study, which was totally exciting. If people haven't read it, it's really great because it concluded there was likely justification to add a commuter rail stop. They did a extensive study of the transportation, which has been something I've been wanting for years and years and years, and I know that the council also believes with this development that it would make a lot of sense to add a commuter rail stop there, which would also have to bring a bridge into the area. So the question is that on our radar, and if so, is it for 2027 or some other year?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor. So certainly the remaining areas of alewife are on our radar. We were originally planning to do it alongside the MBTA schedule, but as you know, they canceled that RFP for the alewife station redevelopment. We really do find that those types of processes are better when there's a developer at the table, and so really recognizing that it's still on their medium-term plan to circle back to that when market situation improves, that we certainly can look to proceed that or wait for that timing. So we don't have a definite time at this point, but certainly it's on our radar. We also know that the Fresh Pond Shopping Mall is owned by a single owner who hasn't expressed interest in redevelopment. So we do think we have time to kind of wait for both more ownership activity and interest, as well as the economy to approve while we move forward on some of these other priorities.
Councilor Nolan?
Yeah, thanks. But we also know that the Department of Transportation is rebuilding that bridge over, right, I think on Fresh Pond Parkway. And let's not forget the commuter rail stop, regardless of what happens, and take advantage of the opportunity of Health Peak. So glad to hear it's on the radar, and I yield.
Councilor McGovern?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. First, just thank you for the report. And just on the, I know Councilor Azubi left, but I'm sure people are watching, just on the social housing piece, I just, we started talking about this and started moving forward with this not too long ago, actually, right, with social housing. And I have heard the term social housing and the discussion of social housing more in the last couple months than I have since I got here. That's because we're making progress on it. And the city is now, Councilor Sabrina Wheeler brought it up a number of times, but the city wasn't really on board at that point. I don't think the majority of the council was on board. Now you've got 9 city councilors that voted for it. The city is looking at it. Whether it's officially seen on the chart here as having an official process, it's obviously something that is now in the realm of discussion when any kind of zoning is being, that's a lot of progress in a very short amount of time. And when I look at this chart, the AHO 5-year report, it's required in the AHO zoning. That's already, not that I'm complaining, but that's already behind. It was 5 years in October of 2025, right? I'm not complaining about that, I understand it, but it does need to get done, right? The Mass Ave Cambridge Street active use, we're having the first meeting about that on Wednesday, but there's gonna be more a new ordinance has to be written, or we have to make some corrections. That's gonna take time. The annual housing review is also something we're required to do. Multifamily zoning, is a yearly update. That was passed in February last year, so that's due. We've been talking about Central Square rezoning for, I think, since I was like 4 years old, it feels like. You know, so there are a lot of things that are in front of the social housing process, and that's not, to me, that doesn't feel like we're kicking the can down the road or ignoring it. There's a lot of talk about it, but there are also some other things that this is a lot of work. You have a lot of things on your plate that you have to do. And so, and I would also, you know, we're about to enter the middle of March, believe it or not. And so starting this process more vigorously in May is a month and a half away, and no one's going to be building anything or permitting anything around social housing in the next month and a half. So this is not, I don't see this as delaying that. I just think you have a workload, you have a schedule, there are things that you're required to produce. So I just don't want anyone who is supportive of social housing to walk away thinking, oh, this isn't happening this month and other things are, therefore the city doesn't care about it. I think this is going to be a very important conversation and one we've all agreed to have. But there are other things in front of it that need to happen too. So I have a different feeling about that. And as long as we get to it in May and have in a more formal way, I think we're going to be fine. And I would just, lastly, Madam Mayor, through you, I just want to say that this chart is really important. You know, what it doesn't show is usually every year we get at least one, if not two or more citizens petitions. And as we know, a citizen petition by law has to go to the ordinance committee, has to go to the planning board. CDD has to do a ton of work on that. I fully anticipate that we'll get one or two this year as we do. And we can't, those have to go through the process, so those will jump the line in a lot of things. And then, you know, we're all talking about reopening zoning that we recently passed to kind of try and fix it. So this doesn't even show all the things that we don't know about yet. And I promise you that the things we don't know about yet, we're going to know about at some point this year because they're coming, because they always do. So this is a lot of work. I appreciate the work you're doing. I hope that we as a council can show some discipline around adding more to this workload over the course of the next year. And if we can get through all of these things between now and the end of the year, that will be a very successful year for us. So I thank you. I thank you for the work that you're doing. And I think the schedule, I'm fine with the schedule.
Councillor Zusi, and then Councillor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank you for this chart too, because it gave me a better sense for your full workload, and I understand that you're doing many, many, many things, and it's fabulous that there are so many affordable housing projects on the docket too. The two things that I don't see on the list are we need to make some amendments to the Cambridge Street zoning, and we'll be talking more about that later in some committee. But I just want to urge us as we zone for the city to be talking about more than the number of housing units. We've got to really be thinking about urban form. We need renderings. We need to be discussing on the floor the nuances of the zoning that will impact livability in the city. So I feel like with another conversation about some amendments to the Cambridge Street zoning, there are things that should have been discussed before the zoning was passed, that many people shared ideas during public comment, but I feel like just there's fine tuning that needs to be done. It's dotting I's, crossing T's that will make that zoning so much better and help to preserve the magic on Cambridge Street. And then we need to be talking about reintroducing institutional use regulations, or maybe it won't be through zoning, maybe it will be through a different mechanism to make sure that we're doing long-term planning with our universities to ensure that they're the best outcomes for the city. So I know I was reading a planning report from the 1990s. At that time, you know, the city would meet quarterly with university administration, city administration, and university administration. Maybe that's what will be required going forward, but it certainly, we've got to put something in place. And again, that may not be through zoning. I'm not exactly sure how that will happen, but we need to make sure that we're aligned and that we're planning together. So anyway, I thank you for overseeing all this work. It's all very, very important work, and I'm just amazed at what we accomplished together. Thank you. I yield.
Councillor Flaherty?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. So I was wondering if there is a drop-dead date on the annual housing review, because I know that will be the kickoff for the multifamily housing zoning ordinance. And the reason why I ask is because I'm aware of some real consternation and some agitation from people on Cushing Street, on Lexington Street, on Wyman Street, on Hawthorne, on Jackson, on Sherman, about proposed developments that are happening in the neighborhood and their impacts on their livability. So I'm wondering, when should I expect an opportunity to weigh in on this?
Yeah, thank you. So the Joint Neighborhood Long-Term Planning and Housing Committee meeting is scheduled for the week of the 24th. I believe it's either the 24th or 25th. So that has been scheduled, and so we will be giving a presentation on what we've seen in the permitting environment, and that will be informed by what we've seen with the Historical Department, ISD, CDD, Housing Department, and that will help to give a better picture for that discussion.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councillor Simmons, are you set? Anyone on this side? Okay. So hearing none, the only action we're taking is to place this on file. I agree with a lot of what's been said. I know that our office has been in touch with you around the social housing piece, so we'll continue to work on that and then look forward to all the other updates that you all will have. So with that, on a motion by Councillor Zusi to place City Manager Agenda Item Number 5 on file, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. This item is placed on file. We will now move to City Manager Agenda Item Number 6, transmitting a communication from City Manager Ian Huang regarding a free cash appropriation in the amount of $400,000 to the General Fund Law Department Travel and Training Judgment and Damages account for the settlement payment relating to Ahern versus Sig Sawyer, Inc. and City of Cambridge, United States District Court, District of Massachusetts, docket number 1-21-CV11007-DJC. This is filed by pulled by Councillor Sabrina Wheeler. You have the floor.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I will be voting no on this settlement. I am going to speak carefully in my remarks about this vote because it is an ongoing legal matter, but it is important for me to be able to provide an explanation of my vote, and the city's law department has reviewed my remarks here to confirm that I'm not waiving any attorney-client privilege in them. The facts of this case have been widely reported by Cambridge Day, WCVB, and elsewhere. For some reason, in 2019, a Cambridge police lieutenant removed his gun from its holster inside a vehicle with several other city officers while on duty at a public event, which according to the city is not an approved practice. A bullet was discharged, which thankfully did not strike anyone else in the vehicle. The police department recommended disciplining the lieutenant for this incident with his gun, and he is arguing that he did not deserve discipline because of issues with the gun. While I appreciate the work from city staff on this case and the proposed settlement with the officer that is being brought before the city council tonight, I will not be voting to approve these funds because I believe that doing so will ultimately cost the city more money and cause more harm to Cambridge residents. During my time on the council, every few years this body has been asked to settle a lawsuit involving the police department, sometimes for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because of that settlement, details of the case that would have been known had the case gone to trial are, as a result, not shared with the public. Because of this, fundamental issues with the police department are never addressed. And we are back in the same position a few years later with the city council being asked to settle another lawsuit involving the police department for hundreds of thousands of dollars. While I understand that a settlement would save the city money in the short term compared to the possibility of losing the case at trial, in the medium term and the long term, I believe settling the case will undoubtedly cost the city far more money, regardless of whatever the outcome of the trial would have been, because the settlement will sweep the details of this case under the rug. That cost is both in dollars and also in harm to public safety and transparency that we owe to Cambridge residents. In my first term, I was in the minority of no votes when the City Council voted to settle a sexual harassment case involving the Cambridge Police Department for $1.4 million. That settlement then hid harassment claims against a high-profile Cambridge police officer until details of the incident were reported by the Boston Globe nearly 4 years later. I believe moving forward with that settlement was wrong then, and I believe approving the settlement would be wrong now. I yield back.
We will go to Vice Mayor Azim.
So I just had a question for my colleague. We know what the settlement offer is now. I think all of us understand that if this was go to trial, and even if there was, a small settlement against us, we would be on hook for many more legal fees. That would be a much larger infraction, a much larger cost, potentially in the millions of dollars to the city of Cambridge. I think that it was given as an example of this case that happened in prior, that the details came out many years later, and then there was a claim that actually in the long run this would save Cambridge money. Could you give us an example? I'm not sure I understand that point of how we would save money in the long run.
Yeah, an example.
Councilor Sabrina Wheeler?
Thank you. Yeah, an example I think of is, this isn't even the first example I can think of a police officer discharging his gun in a public incident. We have a case, last term where another police officer discharged his gun in the middle of a public high school when it was going on. That was the case there. Ultimately, these questions we're facing tie to whether every police officer should have a gun at all the time. By paying $400,000 here, we are, in a sense, paying to push that conversation aside, to buy the officer's silence. By having this go public, we could have a conversation about whether every officer should have a gun so that we aren't in this situation again where another officer has their gun discharged and we're settling another case for hundreds of thousands of dollars a couple of years later. That's a public conversation I think we should be having rather than paying hundreds of thousands of dollars now to not have that conversation.
Vice Mayor?
I'm not sure that I fully understand the logic there, and that there's nothing stopping us from having a conversation now. And the details of the other case were made public, right? And so there's nothing that's keeping us from revisiting that case now. I think I understand the desire to have these details made public, in that I do as well. And I think at this moment, at least, I'm excited to see how the conversation goes. I just don't understand the risk of potentially having a lawsuit settle for millions of dollars in a way that we talk about having a budget crisis now and having a budget crunch, and those $1 million could go to these different sorts of uses in the city, for hypothetically having an easier conversation about police officers owning or having guns, which I think is also just regulated at the state level in large part, and in many different limitations. And I think we have lots of other information for that conversation as well. So it's just something that I don't particularly understand at this point, but excited to see how the conversation goes.
Just super briefly in response, it's possible the details will come out later. Maybe the Globe will do another story, 4 years from now, and we'll get details, years down the line. Maybe we won't. And the conversation about guns having police department, we got that answer last year. It's within the realm of our police department. We don't need to wait for the state to regulate. It's not a requirement for our police officers to carry guns at all times. Get back.
Folks who haven't stated anything, we'll go to Councilor Flaherty.
Well, just briefly, I think this is an issue about fiduciary responsibility to the city financially, and by practice, by trade, I happen to be a trial lawyer, and I've got some experience in these matters, and I do know that the firearm in question here has been the subject of more than 100 lawsuits across the country, and there have been multiple $1 million verdicts against the manufacturer of the company for a defective manufacturing issue with that particular firearm. Now, not talking about the facts in this case, I will say that if the city does have an opportunity to resolve the case, which it appears that we do, and limit the potential liability to the city in this case, we should take full advantage of it very quickly. We can set aside anybody's political opinion, and everyone's entitled to their political opinion about whether or not police officers should be armed. My political opinion is different, and I'm a former prosecutor, and I've got an awful lot of experience dealing with law enforcement issues and police officer issues and firearms and things of that nature. But I think in this case, the real issue is having a risk analysis of this particular case and whether or not it makes sense for the city to, in effect, roll the dice. And I think that it would, to do otherwise, would be improvident and imprudent. So I'll be voting yes. Thank you.
Councillor Nolan? Do you want me to come back to you?
Well, I need to check with the city solicitor first to see if what I'm going to say is legally allowed, because I didn't do that as councillor. So can I just have a minute to do that before I?
We'll go to other folks who haven't spoken. Councillor Simmons?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand the sentiment of my colleague, but having someone who's been around for just a little bit, I remember taking a stand very similar to yours, and I stood behind it because I thought it was the right thing to do. And we could have settled at that time for $4.5 million, but we held up. Again, I was one of those people right down to the last day. At the end of the day, we ended up paying $10 million. So I understand what you're saying, but I having gone down that road a few times, 4.5 versus 10 million, we do the math. So I understand on the one hand, I don't agree with everything you said, like comparing what happened in this case with what happened in another case, because they were somewhat different. The point I'm trying to make, sometimes it may be more, did you say prudent, to accept the settlement. If we want to do some groundbreaking investigatory work after the fact to make sure it doesn't happen in the future, I'm on board with that, but I'm just very concerned about rolling the dice, to use my colleague's term, and then end up 3 years paying, so I respect your decision. I don't agree with because of that. So with that, I yield the floor.
We'll go to Councillor Nolan.
Thank you. I will not say what I was going to say, but what I will say is I really wish we were not in this position. I don't agree with the claims, and I am sad that we're here, and yet I have decided that for the city finances, I will be supporting the recommendation.
Anyone on this side who would like to say anything further? I know Councilor Al-Zubi is not here, but I think we can go ahead and proceed with the vote. I'll say that, we can't say too much, but I feel like reasonable minds could differ on this in some ways, and so I do appreciate kind of what everyone is saying. I think I do find what Councillor Sabrina Wheeler is saying compelling, remembering, that prior situation. I know it's not the same, and I also understand the risk assessment and the recommendation, and I think I agree with a lot of the points made. So I will, I'll vote when the vote comes. I think it seems from the conversation there is a majority to support the appropriation. You only need 5 votes to move forward. So I think, given that I think while not everyone has spoken, I think I have clarity that I need to move forward with the vote. So I'll entertain a motion.
Call the question.
To go ahead and
Move
vote on the appropriation on a motion by Councillor Simmons. And for that, we'll do a roll call.
Councillor Al-Zubi? Absent. Vice Mayor Azim?
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Flaherty? Yes. Yes. Councillor McGovern? Yes. Yes. Councillor Nolan? Yes. Yes. Counselor Simmons?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Sabrina Wheeler?
No.
No. Counselor Zusi?
Yes.
Yes. Mayor Siddiqui?
No.
No. And you have 6 members recorded in the affirmative, 2 recorded in the negative, and 1 recorded as absent.
The appropriation is approved, so we're done with the city manager's agenda. We will now move on. We have to place the matter on file on a motion by Councilor Nolan. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The communication is placed on file. We're going to move on to the calendar. The calendar has a policy order that...
Policy orders.
Oh, no, we're going to not skip over the policy orders. We have 2. Councilor McGovern, did you want to pull them, or were you all set?
I think we can vote them.
On a motion by Councilor McGovern to adopt policy orders 1 and 2, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Those policy orders are adopted. We now move on to the calendar. The charter right here was on Cambridge Street zoning at the upcoming ordinance committee meeting about active ground floor use.
Number 1. Yeah.
Yes, number 1, yes. This was exercised by Councilor Al-Zubi. She's not here. I wanted to just point out something that last meeting, there were 2 points of orders from my colleague, and upon reflection, I think my practice moving forward, and I'm happy to have a further conversation about this, is that I will go to the person who has exercised their charter right, unless I will always go to them unless we haven't heard in a prior meeting from the lead sponsor. So what I'm saying is if we've heard from the lead sponsor, then we'll go to the person who then has exercised their charter right, because that person has already spoken at probably length on the matter. And so I will allow the person who's done the charter right to go first, and then we can have all the sponsors, other folks who've presumably already spoken on it to respond to the person who's exercised their charter right and their argument. Here, Councilor Al-Zubi is not in the room, so I know Councilor Zusi would like to speak, but sure, Councilor Simmons, what would you like to say?
Just very quickly, because Councilor Al-Zubi is not here, and due respect to her, but I know my other colleague is here as well. Did we want to give her so she would have the opportunity to speak to it? And she was the one that she exercised her charter right, or was it somebody else?
Yes.
Yes, she did.
Right, because she did exercise her charter right. In respect to her, I would. Something wrong, Counselor?
I've checked in with her to kind of know where she's
As long as it's all right with her. I mean, if I moved my charter right on something and wasn't here to speak to it, I might be a little taken aback if it was voted in my absence. If you've talked to her and she's good with it, then I'm good with it too.
Yeah, I'm not sure when Councilor Al-Zubi is back. I'll come to you in a moment.
Hopefully we won't be
Councilor
here.
Nolan.
Hopefully we will have
Yes.
insurance by then.
Yes, Councilor Zusi?
Although I doubt it.
So I understand that this will be moot if we don't do something with this today, but I guess I respect, though, I would like these things to be discussed at the ordinance committee meeting this week. I understand that the leaders of the ordinance committee don't think there will be time to discuss these items. So I will introduce a neighborhood and long-term planning meeting where we will discuss these items. So I would like to withdraw this policy order, and we will discuss these items, but at a different forum. So I would like to withdraw the policy order.
So Councilor Zusi has a motion to withdraw that will require unanimous consent. That's the motion before us. We'll speak to that motion. Councilor McGovern?
Yeah, just real quickly, thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. I can't say for certain how long the meeting on Wednesday is going to go. It's really more of a question of the call of the meeting does not include these topics. So just for folks who called in today, who are probably likely going to call in on Wednesday to talk about the items that Councilor Zusi raised, that is not the call of the meeting on Wednesday. Those issues will not be discussed by CDD. I hope colleagues don't discuss them either, and I encourage everyone to keep their comments to the call of the meeting. Sounds like Councilor Zuzzi is going to schedule another opportunity for people to talk about those issues. So if you're watching, please stick to the call of the meeting. Thank you.
So Councilor Zuzzi has moved for unanimous consent. Oh, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to say, I think that the Neighborhood Long-Term Planning meeting makes a lot of sense. It has both of the co-sponsors. I'm on that committee as well. I would just say that the one thing I'd love to figure out as we go into that is that it was not on the CDD timeline, so what are we going to push if we're going to have a discussion about Cambridge Street? Just because, I think that CDD is a bit capacity constrained. So just wanted to bring that up as we talk about scheduling. Thank you.
Other points from the body before we proceed to that vote? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and do a roll call.
Councilor El-Zubi is absent. Vice Mayor Zine? Yes. Councilor Flaherty? Yes. Councilor McGovern? Yes. Councilor Nolan? Yes. Councilor Simmons? Yes. Councilor Sabrina Wheeler?
Yes.
Yes. Councilor Zusi?
Yes.
Yes. Mayor Siddiqui?
Yes.
Yes. And you have 8 members recorded in the affirmative and 1 recorded as absent.
That policy order has been withdrawn. We do not have any tabled items or unfinished business to get to today. We do not have any applications or petitions. There are 24 communications on a motion by
Move to place on file.
Councilor Simmons to place all communications on file. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Those are placed on file. We move on to resolutions. There are 3. Pleasure of the City Council.
Move to adopt the resolutions and make them unanimous upon adoption.
We'll go ahead on a motion by Councilor Simmons to adopt the resolutions, making them unanimous upon adoption. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Those resolutions are adopted. We now move on to committee reports. There are 2 committee reports.
Move to accept the committee reports and place them on file.
On a motion by Councilor Simmons to accept these 2 committee reports and have them placed on file. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The 2 committee reports are placed on file. We don't have any roundtable minutes, so we move on to communication and reports from other city officers.
Mayor Siddiqui?
Yes. Councilor Nolan?
Number 2.
Councilor Nolan pulls number 2. On a motion by Councilor Sabrina Wheeler to place communications from other city officers 1 and 3 on file. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Those 2 are 1 and 3 are placed on file. We're going to communication from Councilor Nolan transmitting a calendar update on the Health and Environmental Committee. Councilor Nolan?
Thank you, Mayor Siddiqui, and through you to my colleagues and to the community. I did pull this since it's a communication transmitting a calendar update on the Health and Environment Committee. I had worked with department heads and the mayor's office. I wanted to provide a clear schedule so that people were able to prepare for various discussions in advance. Many of these topics are newer, including the very exciting geothermal, thermal energy network pilot work, which will be discussed this week at the Climate Committee, and that's been ongoing for several years now. But much of the schedule builds on previous work we have done together in the council, including the updated Zero Waste Master Plan, the Forest Master Plan, a review of the Net Zero Action Plan. So I want to put this out there so my colleagues understand what the plan is for this year, and also make sure that if there's any items that are not on here or that should be further discussed as part of any of these, please make sure that we can get them onto the agenda and we can let folks know when it is that it makes sense. So again, the letter is there, the plans are there, some of the dates are set, the staff is working to establish the dates for the others, but I did hope that we were going to be able to move forward and get a lot done this year in health and environment. There's a number of really important topics we'll be working on.
Thank you, Councilor Nolan. It's a very helpful doc and a good governing agenda. Any other questions on this? Hearing none, on a motion by Councilor Nolan to place this on file, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Communication from other city officers number 2 is placed on file. Are there any late resolutions, clerk?
There is one late resolution. It's a resolution sponsored by Councilor Simmons.
Okay, we'll have to bring it forward and we'll
move suspension.
We'll move suspension. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. We're in suspension with the late resolution. Clerk?
Councilor Simmons is the sponsor, and it's condolences to the family of Raymond T. Coleman on his passing.
Councilor Simmons.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in honor and respect to Raymond T. Coleman. Mr. Coleman is a member of the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Masons, past Grand Historian, but most importantly, had a very dominant hand in the placing of the Prince Hall Memorial, which is on the Cambridge Common. Fine gentleman, very good friends of Red T. Mitchell, who most of you know, some of you may not. Who has served, Red being of Cambridge, Ray not, but he spent a good deal of time putting his heart and soul into the history of Prince Hall and making sure that all that came within his ear anyways would know more about him. Unfortunately, he passed away just a few days ago. His funeral is Wednesday, and so that's why I'm bringing this in as a late resolution. I'd like to be able to present it to him and his family in the Grand Lodge on Wednesday evening at their funeral, showing that we do respect and acknowledge his passing, but thank him for his work. I yield.
Thank you, Councilor Simmons. On a motion by Councilor Simmons to adopt the late resolution, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The late resolution is adopted. There are no late policy orders. Any announcements from the body? Yes, Councilor Zusi.
On Tuesday night, tomorrow night, the Harvard Square Business Association will have a meeting at St. John's at Lesley University at 91 Brattle Street. And then on Thursday at the library, I know Gavin Cleespies will be introducing a program about George Washington's tour of the United States. And then finally on Friday the 13th, between 5 and 8, there'll be an exhibition opening of, I think, featuring 6 artists at the Maud Morgan Art Center. It's all artwork of Mayo, Ireland. So they all sound like fun.
We'll go to Vice Mayor Azim and then Councilor McGovern.
I just wanted to encourage everyone to look at the city calendar. At the end of the month, we'll be having 2 housing committee hearings, one that will be joint with NLTP, which will go over the one-year review of the multifamily housing ordinance and what the results have shown. The goal of that conversation is just to start it with that review. There won't be any amendments introduced at that meeting. And then there's a separate meeting on Central Square, and again, no zoning will be introduced at that meeting. The goal is to review what's been happening over the last year and to figure out, again, how to pick up that conversation. So just wanted to make everyone aware of both meetings, but also to say that, there hopefully be lower stakes reintroductions to the conversations.
Councilor McGovern and then Councilor Nolan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just on Wednesday, 11 to 1, the Human Services and Veterans Committee will be holding a meeting regarding disability services in the city. Looking at a few different departments will be presenting on what services are available to folks who are disabled, but also how do we think about the needs of disabled residents in our planning. So it should be an interesting conversation. And then, as we already mentioned, on Wednesday, 2:30 to 4:30, the Ordinance Committee meeting will be meeting to talk about active use on Mass Ave, Northern Mass Ave, and Cambridge Street. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilor Nolan.
Thank you, Mayor Siddiqui. It's a reminder that tomorrow at 10 o'clock, we're having a Finance Committee meeting on the required police department budget for FY27. Just to acknowledge, we did get a communication from our clerk's office today with the presentation. It is a little confusing because we are having the meeting before we actually know for sure what the police department budget is. However, the idea is to have a hearing and a Finance Committee meeting with the City Council prior to the submission of the police department so they can get some input on that. So that's at 10 o'clock tomorrow in the Sullivan Chamber.
Hearing no other announcements, on a motion by Councilor Flaherty to adjourn, All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Good night, everyone.